Hey folks, so as the title implies, in this video I am doing a 60 to 70 speedrun on a Guardian Druid, which is something I haven't really done in a while. So this Guardian Druid in particular is my old main from Legion. I actually showcased it in a recent video where I did the Mage Tower at level 60. So pretty much the last thing I did before prepping for the speedrun and getting all my consumables, which I will quickly show before the run starts, is I actually got the Mage Tower appearance at level 60. I have that in a video. I'll probably link it in the description if you're curious. It was pretty fun. But I decided, while I'm at it, might as well level this character up to 70, and I figure I haven't done a ton of adventure mode runs yet, so I would make a video out of it. I would actually make this a real speedrun with a lot of prep that goes into it. So you'll probably notice at the moment my Guardian Druid's looking a little bare. Get it? Because, yeah. But basically, the reason why I don't have much on him right now is because I have a full set of crafted gear, which I will be swapping to. So I have a lot of stuff that starts at level 63, 64, and for those slots, I've gotten the Xerath Mortis gear, just as placeholders, and everything else starts at level 61 for the remaining slots. And I will be equipping that the moment I hit level 61. You might wonder, well, what are you going to do in the meantime? Are you just going to quest half naked? Well, no, because as I will show, I don't need to quest up to level 61. There's a lot of free XP that you can get from various sources, and it's going to get me pretty much immediately to 61, profession leveling, Dark Moon turn-ins, etc., etc., etc. So I'll be doing that. It's pretty standard. The Darkmoon stuff is really nothing different than I've done in all my other speedruns, except this time I'm doing it at level 60. Profession stuff is the same as I showed in my recent Paladin speedrun, so if you watch that, it should be mostly the same. Now, one thing to quickly note on the Paladin speedrun is that one had serious audio issues. So I looked into it, and I found out that it technically isn't anything on my end. It's, for whatever reason, Valdrakken in particular, and certain areas throughout Dragonflight, just randomly overload my CPU, and it just completely destroys OBS for, 3 minutes or something like that, and then it gets better and it, stops having audio issues. So I looked into it. Apparently this is, a well-known issue that just happens with Dragonflight sometimes, especially in outdoor areas. I don't really know what I can do to stop it. I'm recording this at 5 in the morning, so maybe that will help a little bit. I also heard that apparently if you turn off your sound, so you might notice that there's no background noise right now, dialogue is still on. It was mostly, apparently, somebody said the sound effects for certain open areas in Dragonflight are not optimized whatsoever. So there's 20 plus sound channels playing at the same time for ambient noise, and that just completely destroys your FPS somehow. I don't fully know how it works. I'm not an expert at that. All I know is I don't want to have that same issue happen again. But I will say, just as a heads up, because now I know that's an issue, if there is stuttering or whatever in the video, it's not on your end. It will get better, and I will probably go into editing and cut out the audio and do a little voiceover and ramble about something while the video stuttering's going on. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but if it does, I've literally done everything in my power to prevent it from happening, and there's not much I can do at this point. So with that out of the way, going into the prep real quick, because this is something that's important. Obviously, if all you care about is the run itself, skip to the timestamp. I always put run starts in the video description. We have our standard stuff, so gun shoes, goblin glider kits. This is standard, and now I'm going to quickly look at the other consumables. So I have Veiled Augment runes. This is the Shadowlands one. Buzzing runes. These are basically your weapon oils, sharpening stones. That is the best one in my opinion. Shocking Disclosure, this potion is insane. It's really good at max level. It's also really good while leveling. Anything that does flat damage is absolutely bonkers for leveling. You should already know this if you've been following for a while. Things like Mark of the Hidden Satyr, Shocking, or I almost said Shocking Disclosure, Elemental Force, anything that does proc damage is good, because a lot of that stuff is tuned around higher levels, and it's meant to compete with stuff that gives you stats. And the damage is not basically tuned properly. So Shocking Disclosure is going to do a significant amount of my damage whenever I use it. And of course, the same thing applies for Glacial Fury. These are both really good at max level. They're even better while leveling. Of course, we have healing potions, drums, etc. The only reason why I have not decided to go with actual max level food, even though I'm doing that everywhere else, for this is because Fried Bonefish, the amount of speed you get from this, I would say, outweighs any stat benefits that you gain from using the max level food for Dragonflight. So I'm still using this. This is a pretty classic one. It used to be bear tartar, now it's fried bonefish. What else? So we have all the Dark Moon items, of course. That's pretty standard. I am using Moonfang's pelt here just because I was able to get one for relatively cheap, but I will always say if Moonfang's pelt isn't available for like 3,000 gold or less, and even that's a little bit pricey, just don't go for it. It's the same value as all of the other ones, and generally speaking, in many cases, I'm able to get every single one of these quest items for less than a single Moonfang's pelt. So this one stands out as being like, you don't really need to worry about it too much, but the rest of them you can generally pick up for super cheap. And I know a lot of people will tell me, oh, the Dark Moon items are super expensive on my server. And if you really plan on leveling alts, best advice I can give you, wait until Dark Moon Fair is not up, then buy these items, because like middle of the month when Dark Moon Fair is like 2 weeks away, these things are selling for really, really low. You can snag a bunch for like 3,000 gold words. I can't talk. But yeah, you can snag a bunch for like 3,000 gold total. Okay, moving on. I can't speak apparently. Banners. These are things I've talked about in my beta runs. I generally don't use them for actual 10 to 60 runs or 10 to 70 runs. I will probably start incorporating them more. It's a little bit tricky. I would say that generally speaking, by the time you reach friendly in like a 10 to 60 run, the impact isn't really super noticeable, but I think especially if you're starting to do a full 10 to 70 run, which on that note, later this week I am doing a full 10 to 70 run. I'm not going to say what the exact race class combo is, but I will say you probably won't be terribly surprised. It's nothing special, but it will be for Alliance. So later this week I am doing an Alliance 10 to 70 speed run, and I have a few new route changes that I'm going to be doing. I actually was not initially planning on this, but I had a different leveling video that basically took a look at certain aspects of leveling, and it was kind of an analysis video of, is this actually fast? And I went in expecting it to not be fast, and in many cases it wasn't, as I expected. And then in a few situational cases, it was extremely fast, way better than I expected, to the point where I'm like, wait, this actually changes my route. And I'm like, okay, fuck it. I'll do another speed run, 10 to 70, and I'll take a look at that. So something to look forward to. But yeah, the banners are something I'll probably start incorporating into the routing, especially for 60 to 70. They are probably worth using. There's a decent amount of slush time that the banners can help you cut out, so I'd recommend getting this. There's also a macro, which I'll show real quick. So if I go into macros, go all the way down here, this right here, show tooltip, battle standard of coordination, and then it just uses all three of them in order of the best one to the worst one. So if you press this button, obviously I won't because I don't want to waste it, it'll use your best available battle standard that is not on cooldown. So it starts with this. If this is on cooldown, it goes to that, etc. You get the idea. And I think the final thing, aside from, the generic stuff like bags and, the reagent bag, is the actual gear itself. Now, a lot of this is pretty standard. I am going engineering just because that lets you get another piece of 316 gear, which I would recommend doing, unless you really want to level up professions while leveling, which, I mean, I don't see a point in doing that. It's just easier to do it at max level, especially when being engineering, at least for the leveling process, gives you another really nice headpiece, and these things are dirt cheap. I can craft them for basically no gold at all. I'm also experimenting with the flamethrower, but I don't know if it's necessarily going to be good. I haven't used it while leveling before, and it's not good at max level, but maybe it's good while leveling. I'm not entirely sure. And then for other slots that don't actually have like crafted items, I have just stuff off the auction house. I have gemmed it, I have enchanted it, so I've done a decent amount. Most of these are fairly straightforward. Basically, all you need to know for the enchants is, whenever possible, I took the speed enchant. I used tiered medallion settings, that's relatively cheap. And yeah, sockets, pretty straightforward. I just went with like stuff to kind of balance my stat priority as a druid, or at least as a guardian druid. That said, I will note that if you kind of look at the entire cost of all of this put together, it's a lot. And you might be thinking, Haraldin, did you really spend 50,000 plus golds on all this leveling stuff? And just to be absolutely clear, yes, in fact, I spent around 120,000 golds on all of the leveling stuff. There's a decent amount of cost that isn't necessarily seen here. Like, I at first bought like a bunch of rank 3 Glacial Furies, and then I was like, it's probably not actually worth it. And then I sent that to my main and just took some of the spare rank 2s that I had. So technically speaking, if we're talking about like actual cost that's going to this run, it's probably closer to like 100,000. It's still a lot. These runs, as I've said in many cases, is not cheap, and that's something I will talk about as we get through the profession leveling. But a topic that a lot of people ask me is, why don't I do more of these? Like, just do more speedruns. You know, why haven't you been doing speedruns? And on top of the fact that, you know, I don't always want to do this, it's really expensive. It's not the kind of thing where you can just say, oh yeah, I'm gonna do a speedrun today. And I mean, you can, right? Like, technically speaking, you don't need it. A lot of this stuff. I would say about like 90% of the time save comes from 10% of the cost. I've said that before, and it remains true now. You do not need all of these fancy consumables. I would say get a few gun shoes, a few goblin gliders, some basic, even like old Shadowlands consumables will help. Darkmoon quest items, like I said, fairly cheap. The basic crafted gear with like no enchants, no gems, etc., also fairly cheap. And I mean, honestly, that's it. That's really all you would need. And that is a small fraction of the cost, and it really helps. The other stuff is just kind of for spectacle, right? It will save time. Using a Glacial Fury versus a Spectral Flask of Power will save time in the long run, but, like, is it really worth it? No, but it's more entertaining. People like to see this. Obviously, whenever I do a no consumable or whatever thing, even though I occasionally get comments like, why don't you try a run with no heirlooms, no consumables? Yet nobody actually wants to watch that. There's, like, a few people who think they want to watch that. They click on that video, they watch me take forever to kill, like, 5 mobs, and then they're like, okay, this is boring, I'm not going to watch this. Trust me, I've tried it before. It's just not nearly as entertaining, and it's also not fun for me to run. So if it doesn't perform well, and I'm not enjoying it, there's absolutely no way in hell I'm going to do that. So the end result is that when I do a speedrun, I do one of these, with all the super fancy stuff. It's more fun to run, more fun to watch, but it's also expensive, meaning I can only do these some of the time. Like I said, already doing one later this week, that's going to cost a shit ton as well. So just keep that in mind. But what else? I think that covers basically all of the basic stuff that I want to mention. Oh yeah, profession equipment. I'm going to be trying out herbalism for a reason that I will explain later, but my 2 starting professions are, as mentioned in the last video, the paladin one, blacksmithing. I'm still sticking with that. It just seems like the easiest, and engineering specifically for the crafted helmet. So I think we've gotten over all that. I forgot to mention checkered flag. Yeah, I have that. You might be familiar with that if you watched a lot of the older speedruns and stuff, but yeah, we're going to be using that in this run as well. I can't use Glacial Fury just yet, because that requires level 61, but I'm just popping all this stuff just in case. Can't hurt. And the moment I'm ready, we can start the timer and accept the quest. Also, one of the main things about 60 to 70 runs is they technically aren't, like, super serious speedruns. I'm more doing this as practice for the upcoming 10 to 70 run, because that's the one that, honestly, I really take seriously. But I'll go ahead and start the timer and just rant about that while I actually go ahead and do it. Okay, so talk to Ebonhorn, listen to Ebonhorn, blah, 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 blah. Do this. Okay, yeah, I still need to do the introductory quests. It's still early in the morning. My brain is, like, kind of mush, so we'll see how best I can do this and whether I can actually talk properly. But yeah, I'm still doing all the introductory quests, and what was I saying about runs? Yeah, so the problem with 60 to 70 runs is, like I said, they're not necessarily a serious run. And this is the main issue I have with people trying to say they got, like, a really fast time for 60 to 70. And it's like, if you're doing a 60 to 70 run on a character with full best in slot Mythic Fated gear, compared to a character now who's just hitting 60 in, you know, Zereth Immortus Greens, which is the best that I could scrounge up without actually spending a significant amount of time, it's just not really comparable. If you want an actual realistic way to, you know, determine how fast, like, certain leveling is, it needs to be a fresh character. It's just impossible to say that, like, oh, X thing can be done in a certain amount of time if you're doing it, if you don't have, like, a baseline, right? And fresh characters are a good baseline, right? Because everybody starts off equal. You can mail stuff to the character, you can do prep outside of that character, But if all we're counting is how long does it take for a character to log into the game as a brand new, fresh character and reach max level in terms of real time, no like logging in and out over the course of a month shenanigans, that is much easier to set a baseline on, and it's honestly more realistic for the average player than saying, oh, I'm going to do like a million hours of prep before the actual thing starts. Also, all the dead bodies here is concerning. I hope that I'm not going to get ganked while doing this, because I will be keeping war mode on. Wait for the Defiant Dragon Scale. I think I do need to wait for this. Time until arrival. Fuck that. Okay, so I am actually going to head over to... This is the Cat and Shaman. This is Thunderbluff. I think I set my Hearthstone correctly. And I'm just going to go do Dark Moon Fair. So I'm going to do that first. Get all that XP buff stuff going. Yep, did it correctly. Keep hitting the wrong keybinds. Okay. So I'm just going to fly down here for Dark Moon Fair. Technically, it might have been slightly faster if I flew a bit outside and talked to the mage. We're talking like 5 seconds faster. This technically is faster. But then you could argue like, oh, well, setting my Hearthstone to Thunderbluff is inherently unrealistic. And to a certain extent, I agree with you. Because it would not be set there if this was like a full 10 to 60 run. But I feel... for the purposes of just showing like the fastest way you can do it on 10 or on 60 to 70, I'm just going to do some weird jank stuff like getting the checkered flag, like presetting my Hearthstone to Thunderbluff, even if that necessarily or isn't necessarily the most realistic method for 10 to 70. That's okay because I'm also doing a 10 to 70 run later. This is more just to, it's like almost a different category, so to speak. But for this different category, obviously this is technically not the fastest you can do. Because if I had full Zereth Mortis or Sepulchre, the first one's crafted gear, that would be even faster. Should have been clicking on these items. Lost a little bit of time there. And it's also like I have a bit of rested experience left over, which that one isn't even really something I can control, right? You know, it's kind of impossible for me to get a character without rested experience unless I were to quite literally level one up from scratch, which, once again, I'm doing, but then it's like, do I just not use any of my other existing level 60s for, you know, showcasing it in a speedrun? I think we're fine. I think we can all accept the fact that, like, you know, this may not be a perfect one-to-one representation of what your leveling experience may be like, but you're probably going to get enough information out of it. Okay. I think I've rambled enough about, like, the generic setup stuff. So, as for Darkmoon Fair... almost done. I think I still need to do... where is the Moonfang one? Is Moonfang down here? Okay, Moonfang is turned in here. Oh, does this... yeah, I guess I could get... oh, I didn't even think of this. Shit, I don't have a thermal anvil. Oh, that would have been actually really good to know. Okay, so getting blacksmithing ahead of time and potentially getting another one of the profession quests ahead of time could save time. That's probably something I'll do for the 10 to 70 run. There's a bunch of little things like that where it's not going to be perfect the first time around when I'm doing it, but a lot of the reason why I'm doing the testing now on this, like, somewhat serious, somewhat casual 60 to 70 run is so that when I do it the entire way through in the 10 to 60 run, it's fresh in my mind and I can make it much better. I just don't need to clean anything up. We're good to go. I'm trying to think before I get carried away telling stories, because I have a lot of stories and stuff to tell, as always. But before I get carried away doing that, I want to make sure that I got everything covered. I think I should go check the Zeppelin. Zeppelin might just be here, because I got there at around 2 minutes. It said it had a 3-minute time to arrive. Bingo. It's right here, so I'm going to activate it, and then I'm going to immediately hop back in the Valdrakken portal. So in theory, if the Zeppelin had arrived the moment I turned in that quest to the tower, would have been a minor time save. That's not really something you can control, technically. If I cut out, like, my explanation at the start, I could have explained it, or I could have set it up, right? I could have said, like, oh, I'm timing until the next Zeppelin arrives. I did that in some of my beta runs. Not doing that now. Don't really feel like doing it, and it's not that important, because also, for the purposes of the full 10 to 70 run, that's something that I am effectively going to have zero control over. because I have no idea exactly how long 10 to 60 is going to take me. It would quite literally be impossible for me to record all that ahead of time. Okay, now Valdrakken, moment of truth. So this is where I get a lot of frame rate issues, and what is that? Oh, okay. Yeah, there's likely going to be a little bit of stuttering here. I tried to record it super late at night to make it less of an issue, and I'm going to try to like turn my camera towards the ground just to make it a little bit easier. But there's only so much I can do here. Gonna learn blacksmithing and engineering. So talk to you, Dragon Isles, blacksmithing, and I want to go learn engineering. Just so I can equip my helmet. It's this goblin. And get over here. Is the quest not active? Oh, right. I need to get to a higher level before the quest appears. So open up blacksmithing. Oh, yeah. I have all the materials in my bank. That's something I forgot to mention. That eats up into part of the cost, but it's not a ton. I'm going to quickly show the profession window. Think that's displaying? No, let me showcase this. Can I? There we go. Yeah, so that's the little profession document that I have. I talked about that in the last run. Oh, I need to put it in a different window so I can actually see it. That would help. And yeah, I just wanted to show it so you can see what I'm talking about. You can see it in the bottom. This is once again linked in the description. So if you want to use this Google Doc, if you want to see the entire shopping list that I put together, go check that out. Going to, though, close... Oh, that was the timer. Close that on my OBS so that I can actually focus on getting this done. Okay, so plate bracers times 1, and then blacksmith hammer times 1. That works. All right. Then talk to you. Train. Go over here. Let's see. Ceravite skeleton key times 2. And pickaxe times 1, plate boots times 1. So pickaxe times 1, plate boots times 1. You can do up to 30 items for Profession XP in case you didn't watch the last video. So I've figured out the easiest way to get 30 items. So chest guard. After chest guard, it is sickle. And I have like a little order just so I don't need to spend a ton of time thinking about it. There we go, 61, like I said. Didn't require, well, much setup at all. Repair hammer down here. After repair hammer, it is toolbox, and then skinning knife. Next is leatherworker's kit, dirk, and defender. Or leatherworker's knife. Leatherworker's knife, then dirk, and then defender. Alright. Talk to you. Get these recipes again. Tool sets. Leatherworker's tool sets. Then the axe. Knuckles up next. I must have to learn them. Yeah, knuckles. Oh yeah, there's a bunch at this point. So the knuckles are first. Then the sword. And then the needle set. Then the expert clasp. Primal weight stone is down here. And now I'm going to quickly open this up. Specialization, wrong thing. I meant to click specialization, hammer control, unlock, yes, apply knowledge, yeah. Just doing that, it gives you slight increase to your blacksmithing speed. I don't know if that actually saves time. Probably doesn't. If I were to do the menuing a little bit faster, that would probably save like seconds. But theoretically, it does actually save time, which is why I think it's interesting and went ahead and did that. Obviously, don't do that if you're actually planning to use blacksmithing at max level. Alright, so Haraldin from the future chiming in, as you might expect by the fact that I need to cut in here, and well, as you can see by the extremely choppy footage. Best laid plans of mice and men, you know, Valdrakken just fucked me over again. Now, I will say, thankfully, this only happened twice during the run, so this is going to last for approximately 4 minutes. Then I'm going to restart my game, which, as I later find out, completely restarting your game solves the issue. So it's some sort of like memory leak thing, which just completely fucks the game until it's fully restarted. I don't fully understand it, but like reloading doesn't fix it, changing settings doesn't fix it. And it's weird because in the previous run, it also kind of fixes itself after a long extended period of time. But I guess if you just force close the game and reopen it, that also just immediately solves the problem. I don't fully understand this. I will say, if somebody is like a bit more technically minded and, you know, has a solution for this and wants to help me out, I would appreciate it. I would like to understand why this issue keeps happening. I think, based on some of the stuff that I'll discuss later on in the speedrun, when it happens the second time, thankfully, the second time this happens, I catch it immediately and it lasts like 30 seconds. So overall, this actually had a minimal impact on the run, which is great. But it seems like there is something to do with the sound effects, because the next time this happens is during one of the cutscenes in the Waking Shore that gets skipped, where Razageth does like a big sound like effect when she comes in, and that like weird garbled Razageth sound effect somehow just completely murders my game and sends it into a stuttering mess. So I do suspect that it has a lot to do with the sound effects, because in the past when I have had problems with this, it was a lot of times around like Onaran Plains, like in the quest lines. Specifically, I remember the areas with like thunder sound effects a lot of times would have that issue. And it's like, in hindsight, I'm not entirely sure if that's just coincidence. But now that I have, you know, had this issue happen consistently, I think maybe it wasn't coincidence. And maybe it was just some weird sound effect bug that's causing the game to like have a meltdown. And late for like the entire final 2/3 of the run, I actually play with sound completely off, just not even risking it. And I ran into absolutely zero issues. So I suspect that by turning off sound, I managed to solve the problem. And I guess the end result is that I might just have to play World of Warcraft without sound from now on, and at least until this problem gets fixed. But in all of my years playing World of Warcraft, I think this is by far the worst performance issue I have ever encountered. I've like played on really bad computers before that, you know, didn't run World of Warcraft great, especially when I was a kid. And I ran into issues before that made it like not perform well, but something to this degree where just, you know, drop of a hat, the game turns into a stuttering mess, and especially impacts the recording software, because however bad it looks in game, I can tell you that it wasn't actually that bad to play. It's a little bit deceptive, right? Because you can notice it's stuttering a little bit in game, but it's not really that bad. But then you go and look at the recording and you're just like, oh god, it fucks OBS. It's terrible. So it's a little bit unfortunate. Not a ton that I could do about that, at least at the time. I'm going to hope that by just keeping game sound permanently off and not even enabling dialogue or whatever I did for the full 10 to 70 run, that I don't encounter this issue. I wish I didn't need to do that. I wish it was easier, but it is what it is. Anyway, I'm about to solve the issue, so cut back to past Haraldin. Alright, I think it's working now. Yeah, I did everything that I thought could actually fix that, you know, CPU overload issue, and for whatever reason, I really don't know what they've done with Dragonflight. And the funny thing is, like, I know that there's going to be comments like, it's an issue on your end, it's an issue with your computer. The amount of posts that I've read from people with, like, computers infinitely better than mine saying, I have a serious issue, and then the response to that is always, herder, oh, it's an issue on your computer, haha, don't blame the game, hee hee, hoo hoo, I'm so smart, I know how to diagnose computer issues. Like, no, it is an issue on World of Warcraft's end. Literally no other game that I've ever played on my computer, like, it's not an amazing computer, but it is pretty good, and no other game that I have played has had even close to the problems that World of Warcraft has had. Oh, right. I just realized I don't actually have my gear equipped. Would help if I did that before trying to do a bunch of really big pulls, wouldn't it? I can also turn the audio on. It's annoying that I have to jump through hoops. I will note that, honestly, this is another major reason why I haven't done many speedruns. Ever since I realized that this was, like, an actual serious issue, it's really hard to justify doing a bunch of speedruns when you know that you're going to run into all these problems. It is just extremely frustrating to have to diagnose computer issues, or honestly game issues, because Blizzard doesn't know how to optimize shit properly, while you're trying to also worry about going fast. It is just incredibly frustrating. But as you can see, when I restart the game, like I move around, it's completely fine. For whatever reason, something with Valdrakken just destroys the game's performance. I don't know what they managed to do to fuck it up that badly, but honestly, like, it needs to be fixed, because it's something that happens to me obviously outside of just these recordings. It's only noticeable, right, because the only times when I have to actually post unedited footage of me going through Valdrakken is when I'm doing the speedruns. If I'm ever in Valdrakken recording something different, I don't actually need to showcase that. It doesn't matter. But for this, it actually really does impact me, but it's also just annoying if I'm, like, sitting in Valdrakken and my performance tanks to absolutely nothing. And once again, absolutely nothing I can do. It is on Blizzard's end. It is not my problem whatsoever. So yeah, that's unfortunate. It does appear that there is just genuinely no solution, considering I tried everything, and it's still just kind of fucked my game. So I'm just gonna hope that it's good from now on. It's funny because, like, I ran into a lot of issues with that happening when I was doing my beta streams. And on my beta streams, I always just assumed that it was, like, a problem on my end. I thought for a while it was NVIDIA Broadcast causing issues, and there definitely was some issue I had with NVIDIA Broadcast that, at least for one stream, did cause problems. But now that I have run into these issues consistently and, looked up other posts, because now that the game's actually out, there's a lot of other people, so it's easier to diagnose these issues, because it's not just one person running into it on the beta and screaming into the void, right? So I've run into a lot of other people who have the exact same problem as I do, and yeah, it's almost universally on the game's end. Every single solution I've tried doesn't seem to actually help. I don't know. I really don't know what can be done about it other than just acknowledge the fact that, like, it just is what it is, and there isn't anything that I can do about it. So I'm going to drop my banner here just before I forget. I'll try to use it whenever I remember. And yeah, hopefully I did a good job recording audio over whatever that was. Admittedly, right now I am kind of frustrated because I'm gonna be probably pretty tired by the time that I actually, finish recording this. And the inherent problem with, having to go in and edit a speedrun like this is that it gets into a point where I'm doing, like, a 3-hour plus speedrun. Then I have to go in and record audio for the speedrun and overlay it and, put it in Adobe Premiere and do, like, basic editing and whatnot. And then after all of that is said and done, I need to then re-encode it and then upload it. And by that point, it's usually, like, way past the time when I would rather be sleeping. And it's just not fun. So, not thrilled about the fact that I'll have to do that later, but at the end of the day, what can you do? It is what it is. Where's Rathian? Okay, this is where I need to talk to Sendrax. I'm going to be mostly doing the campaign. At a certain point, I will stop and pivot. So, we'll see about that. But the end result is, like, campaign leveling is pretty fast. Now, a lot of people are going to say things like, oh, well, you could just... what's it called? You could just get boosted, right? I've seen a lot of people boosting this expansion, at least in terms of, like, open world elites. I don't really know why it's more popular now than it was before. I don't know what really changed in that regard. Obviously, we're going to pick Waking Shores, but you can pick all of them here. And it gives a nice little bonus chunk of experience. So, Azure Span, pick that. It's not, like, a ton. There's also this UI bug that's literally been happening since beta that still isn't fixed. Like, honestly, hate to say it, but there is a lot of just lack of polish in Dragonflight. Overall, I think it is definitely a significant step up from Shadowlands, but a lot of people seem to be surprised that I don't absolutely love Dragonflight, and, I mean, honestly, this is why, right? It's a fine expansion. I'm enjoying raiding. I'm not saying, like, oh my god, this is terrible, I'm gonna quit, whatever. But there is just a noticeable lack of polish with a significant part of the game. and it just makes doing really anything kind of frustrating. I don't want to complain too much, but it is one of those things where, especially given the fact that I've already run into the, you know, kind of thing destroying my game issue, and I've already now had that UI bug again, it just reminds me of, oh yeah, this game is broken, and I fat fingered this again. I'm going to unbind this for now. I don't know why I keep fat fingering it today, just wasting my potions, but it is very annoying. Okay. So I'm trying to, like, slowly untilt. Yeah, Syndrax, send the signal fair. Come on, Syndrax. There we go. Yeah, I'm trying to slowly untilt from that, because definitely, you know, imagine, put yourself in my position, and, you know, have to do all this preparation for the speedrun, and set it all up, get all the items, and then remembering, oh yeah, that problem happened last time. I never really figured out a consistent solution. Then I tested a million different things, thought I had fixed it, and then it happens again. It's just extremely frustrating. You know. What do I need to do for this other quest? I think I need to... okay, did that. So, Syndrax, this is the RP. I have to wait for the dragon, so I can go do these quests while I wait. Going to just round up a bunch of elementals. Now, I haven't played Guardian Druid much since the changes, so I know that the rotation is quite a lot different. I should also pick my talents. I'll do that in a second. I'll do my talent selection while Syndrax is doing her little RP escort. That, should work out pretty well. I need to do the volcanic geodes. Right. Yeah, because especially the main thing is with the change to how Raise works. Raise is now, from what my friend who's, like, really good at Guardian Druid has been telling me, Raise is now, like, one of your largest sources of damage. If I look at breakdown, oh, well, actually, Glacial Fury is your largest source of damage. So, like I said, Glacial Fury, it's gonna save time, right? It does a fucking boatload of damage, but is it really worth the cost if you're just, like, leveling casually? Absolutely not. I'm just doing it because it's kind of fun, and I want to see just how fast I can push this time. But yeah, Raise is now, like, a major source of damage, which means I have to play it completely differently from how I've been doing it in, like, all my speedruns before. And speedruns are the main time when I've been playing Guardian Druid, at least in recent years. So, let's see, I need one more Volcanic Geode, so I can go do this. I'm going to start the next bit of RP, and then there'll be a little bit more RP, and then it'll start. So talk to Rathian, talk to Solistra, and then while this is playing, I'll go do the other quest. So it's a minor time loss from campaign to do this, so I know not everybody has actually watched the other Paladin run. So I'll just kind of repeat some of the basic changes that I made since launch, which is the one that got most of the views. On launch, for the campaign leveling, I heavily recommended against doing these quests. And a lot of people were confused about that because on paper, it's efficient, right? And you can see I'm doing it now, right? On paper, it is efficient. The problem is it loses you a little bit of time in the campaign, and when everybody's getting funneled through the campaign on launch day, it was very important that you got ahead. And getting just a little bit of a head start can make, like, a massive difference, which is why I recommended that everybody skip this set of quests, because that way you can really quickly get through this part of the campaign. And okay, there we go. I wasn't sure if I bugged the quest or something, but no, it's working correctly. And also, I quickly realized from this that lava beetles is something that I should probably get. You could, technically speaking, buy 5 lava beetles off the auction house and then do a turn-in. That would accomplish the exact same thing. And then I need to talk to Syndrax. Syndrax, okay. So, talents. Well-honed Instincts is fine. And Ursoc's Guidance. Don't want to fall behind. So, yeah, quickly, I forgot to go over my talent build. It's pretty straightforward. This tree is, like, I mean, honestly, there's no diversity in the actual Druid tree. There's some, like, raid utility stuff you can swap around with. The Guardian tree actually has some, flexibility in terms of what exactly you're picking. So I am going mostly standard for the early stuff. I am taking like Soul of the Forest over after the Wildfire and going for like a bit more of a damage heavy build, just because obviously or survivability is not a huge concern while you're leveling. Nothing can really kill you. After the Wildfire, of course, at max level is extremely powerful, and for AoE, because Raise is so crucial, I rushed that. And then also there's like a really nice combo on large pulls with Incarnation. Incarnation makes your Mangle hit multiple targets. And like I said, I've taken a bunch of talents that buff Mangle. So by buffing Mangle and having it hit multiple targets, it's like one of my heaviest hitters on single target and AoE. But there's also a talent called, I think, Tooth and Claw. Yeah, Tooth and Claw. Or no, different one. Vicious Cycle, right. Vicious Cycle makes it so my Mangle hits increase the damage of my next Maul, which is replaced by Raise, so it increases the damage of my next Raise. And that way, on large AoE pulls, I can press Mangle, it hits 3 targets, it gives me 3 stacks of whatever that talent is that I just said and just immediately forgot. It gives me 3 stacks of that, really nice. And I'm going to quickly do this, Stampeding Roar. Yeah, so we can see it here. So 3 stacks, Raise. 3 stacks, Raise. 3 stacks, Raise. And I can just do this. Technically, on longer fights, you would also want to keep your stacks of Thrash up, but I don't really think that the amount of damage the bleed would do in that short span of time would make it worth pressing Thrash, at least at these low levels where everything is just kind of dying. Yeah, you can see how much damage Raise does there. And Glacial Fury actually surprisingly didn't do much damage. I don't know why it randomly one-shot that other mob, and then this time it's just kind of tickling him. Okay, Dragon riding up to here to get this whelp. I'm going to try not to get into combat. Come on, there we go. One of the nice things about doing these quests with full dragon riding is you can do little skips that you couldn't necessarily do during the actual campaign. Why is this not working? Hello? Am I just getting really bad input lag? Doesn't look like it. Everything, like, none of my other inputs are lagging. It's specifically the interaction with the whelps that was lagging. Weird. I'm just going to pick that up just in case, but I don't really think I need it. Yeah, so, honestly, one of the things you'll quickly notice is you technically don't need Gunshoes and Gliders at all, because of the way dragon riding works. With full glyphs, it's obviously really insane. This is something that is pretty common knowledge at this point, but I know some people may just be joining in this run from the stuff at launch. So if you want to shave off a bit of gold, you can shave off Gunshoes and Goblin Gliders. It's definitely not unreasonable, I would say. I'm going to... there's not really anything else here. What I'll do, test the flamethrower. My GTFO is really not happy with me for standing in that. Okay. It deals a decent amount of damage. I need to turn off GTFO for these leveling runs, because I know some people say it's like kind of annoying. And like, I get that. I need to use it for like max level stuff, because GTFO really helps me. If I'm accidentally standing in shit, it's really, really helpful, yeah, for that to happen, even if it is moderately annoying for a lot of people. So I apologize for that if you are one of the people that doesn't love GTFO. I will try to remember to turn it off next time. And it looks like somebody else has just been through here, so a little bit unfortunate. I need to do a fairly small pull. I'm gonna just raise here a bit just to... I can destroy these Phoenix Feathers. There's one more mob around the corner. Yep. Come on. There we go.
It's been a while, hasn't it? Jaraden considered the outpost a well-earned
Okay, there we go. There's at least some mobs here. So I'm really hoping the big Jaraden pull that I normally do to get percent for the bonus objective is not completely gone. So Mangle here. Because I don't have Galactic Guardian, I also need to remember to keep Moonfire up, which admittedly is something that I'm not entirely used to doing, because generally with Galactic Guardian, Moonfire just refreshes itself. So as long as you don't have a proc, you don't need to use it. And actually, one of the funny things about Galactic Guardian is, technically speaking, according to some of my druid friends, you actually don't want to press Galactic Guardian procs. It is actually a damage loss to use Galactic Guardian procs, because apparently the free Moonfires on another Galactic Guardian will consume your Galactic Guardian proc for bonus damage. So technically speaking, if you're actively pressing Moonfire whenever Galactic Guardian procs, unless something changed, for the record, like they told me this about a month ago. I don't think that has changed since. I don't think there's been any major change to Galactic Guardian. But yeah, like a second proc can consume the bonus from your first one. That makes it deal bonus damage. So technically speaking, it's actually a DPS increase to just let your free procs like cannibalize each other, so to speak. And you can just sit there and use other buttons, because as a bear now, a lot of your buttons do damage, and it doesn't necessarily need to be from Moonfire. Which is a little bit contradictory, right? Because if you watched my Mage Tower video, you might notice that, you know, Moonfire was the vast majority of my damage, and while it's technically not bad, and Moonfire is pretty good, in that particular situation, the Mage Tower, right, the important thing was having easy range damage. So Moonfire was very strong, but, you know, technically speaking, a build like this may have been even stronger. The only reason I didn't run it is because on Mage Tower, with the nature of how the Inquisitor Varus guy works, you need to be fighting mobs from a distance. And during, is there any RP coming up? I don't think there's any significant RP coming up. So going to actually put drums on this, and I'm going to put my potion on Control 4, since for whatever reason tonight I just can't stop hitting Control 5 and wasting my potions. And I really don't want to be doing that, so just going to change up my keybinds to kind of change my muscle memory. I don't know, might make it a little bit easier. Here I can do a big pull. I'm just going to round up a bunch of stuff with Moonfire and then kind of blast it. Twin Moonfire is still really good, even if you aren't running the full Moonfire build, just because look at how easy Twin Moonfire makes it to round everything up. It's so nice. You just press one Moonfire a bunch of times, and it's really good. I actually am. It's annoying me. So I am going to turn GTFO off in a second. Just bear with me. Alright, almost there. And just gonna... I need to get out of combat so I can do this. So Shift 2, add-ons, GTFO, reload. Really nice add-on for raiding, not so nice while leveling. Alright, any second now. There we go. Alright. At least I think one of the nice things that I just realized, kind of like silver linings of the whole World of Warcraft can't stop, like, crashing issue, or at least, like, destroying my CPU, is the moment I restarted there, like the entire game, not just reloading, the issue fixed itself. So in the future, if I ever run into that issue, I could always just shut down World of Warcraft and then turn it on again, and maybe that would fix it. I don't know for sure. I also don't know why it sometimes happens outside of Valdrakken. Like, that issue consistently happens to me within Valdrakken, but then every so often it'll just happen somewhere completely different, and I just have no idea what causes it. Onaran Plains specifically, I've had a lot of issues like that. So what I might do is, actually, it is kind of funny. Anecdotally, now that I think about it, you know, you don't really consider that, right, when you're, you know, in the moment. But when I think back on all the times when I've had issues, all the times when I've been like, wow, my computer is just melting, it has been in Onaran Plains. For whatever reason, something about that zone, I think, in addition to Valdrakken, causes a lot of problems. What I'll do is when I'm there, or before I enter Onaran Plains, I'm also going to try to turn off sound. So I've never really had any issues in Waking Shores, so I'm at least just keeping it active for now. Because I like having in-game sound. I've said this before, but like some people are super anti in-game sound. They're like, in-game sound sucks, and I don't get it. I really don't. Let's just test for science. How much XP does Lush Hawkenbloom give us? Yeah, not much. So a lot of people will say, like, oh, yeah, Gathering is just free XP. The amount of time it took me to go grab that Lush Hawkenbloom was not worth the pitiful amount of experience that it gave. Just so we're clear, because I think a lot of people will see that I don't mention it in my guides and they think that I overlooked it. It's like, wow, I can't believe this guy forgot that you can level by picking up herbs. And it's like, no, no, I did not forget. Trust me, it is not fast. It's one of those things where, like, it is deceptive, because explaining to somebody why something is not necessarily free XP is a little bit tricky, because a lot of people have trouble kind of evaluating the time cost of certain things. They'll be like, oh, well, this is really easy, so it is therefore free. It's like, I mean, no. You know, the amount of time that it takes to pick up a single herb may not seem like much, but if you add up all the time that you're picking up all those herbs, and then you consider how much experience you're getting from all of them, like, is it really worth the time it takes to actually go and do all that? Like, it really is not. And I don't know, I've tried explaining it to people before. Some people, when I put it that way, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. A lot of other people just simply cannot wrap their heads around it. They're just like, well, it's a thing that I can easily click on, so therefore it must be efficient. When it's like, I mean, there's a lot of zones in this game that are fairly efficient, and I end up not routing them in because, you know, they take a lot of time to travel to, right? It's kind of the same concept, right? Like, a quest may be super efficient, but if you have to spend, like, a shit ton of time getting to the quest, then is it really efficient? And in the case of herbalism and mining, it's just not efficient at all. Anyways, am I missing a book? It says, my thing says there's a book on the bottom floor. I think I'm being lied to. Yeah, there's a book over here? Since when is there a book over here? Wow, that's actually a much faster way to get the books. Huh. Also, I fucked up. I should have handed in Sendrax's quest over here. I've said that before. It's like a little bit of a time save. For whatever reason, Sendrax will just auto-run from wherever she's standing over to this location instead of appearing here. But then you'll notice that, you know, she then just, even if you start here, she'll just do like a little RP walk and start. I don't know, it's stupid. What I'm saying is she should just teleport to that location. I didn't word that well. Actually, or the thing I said before about Gunshoes not being worth it, this is the one situation where Gunshoes actually are worth it. I take that back. Okay, I'm going to grab the egg, then I'm going to do this, and pick up the egg, and then turn off that. If you want to know how I slow down, that's a question I've gotten sometimes, you want to set a keybind to toggle walk/run, and you can actually walk while using Gunshoes, and it slows you down to a crawl. It's kind of weird how that works. I don't know why it does that. But yeah, if you do that, Gunshoes like slows down significantly. I'm assuming it's something to do with like weird WoW code jank where Gunshoes technically is a modifier on your movement speed. And if you're walking, your movement speed is probably like less than 100 or something like that. And, you know, Gunshoes actually ends up reducing your movement speed compared to walking. I don't know. There's a lot of jank like that in World of Warcraft's code. Speaking of fun jank, oh, this is something that I haven't really talked about, like, in my Discord, because it's not something that I really cover, but like, the topic of jank World of Warcraft code made me think of something that I thought would be really funny. This is only going to interest a few people. Other people who maybe haven't experienced it will be like, oh, that's mildly interesting. But for people who have experienced the bug that I'm about to talk about, you're going to think this is probably really funny. So, Senarth is, well, a shit boss, right? Senarth is not a great boss, right? But one of the things that made Senarth so annoying, that anyone who progged Mythic Senarth would know, is that there was this weird issue that a lot of people didn't fully understand, where sometimes Senarth would cast Chilling Blast the moment she was about to start Phase 3, and sometimes she wouldn't, and she would only cast it after she started Phase 3. So there was like this weird overlap that could sometimes happen, but it wasn't fully consistent, and nobody was fully able to pinpoint for a while what actually caused this problem. And everybody was like, oh, why is Senarth sometimes doing this and sometimes not? But what was weird is that for some guilds, it was happening all the time. For other guilds, it was happening like none of the time. And then sometimes some people would have like some pulls that happened, some it didn't. It was weird, right? Well, there were two problems. So, I say one problem, but it was one problem caused by two specific abilities. Now, the funny thing about Senarth is Senarth can be slowed. And Senarth's ability sequences, while she's moving up her web, they kind of continue indefinitely for whatever reason. I don't know why Blizzard didn't like code them on a time limit or something, but there's just an infinite sequence of abilities. But technically speaking, Senarth should only be moving up from her platform to the next platform for a set amount of time. So there's only a set amount of abilities she should cast. So the reason why Chilling Blast was sometimes overlapping and happening a second time is because if Senarth was slowed, she would move ever so slightly slower to the point where it would take her a bit longer to reach her next platform, so she wouldn't hit that phase trigger, and she would get off one more ability in her infinite sequence, which would be Chilling Blast, and then you would have to deal with that going into the final phase. So Blizzard said something to the effect of like, fixed an issue where, or fixed like a issue with Senarth's mechanics overlapping or whatever, or Chilling Blast will now happen consistently. I forget whatever the exact wording she used, whatever the exact wording Blizzard used was for like that hotfix, but it didn't properly explain what they actually fixed, because what they actually fixed to make Senarth work properly and not have the Chilling Blast overlap is they made it so Senarth could not be affected by movement speed decreases. And the two in question that would affect Senarth were the Frostfire Belt that a lot of plate classes were using. I use it on my warrior, and I think a lot of other people in my raid were using it as well, because it's a really good item. But it deals damage and it applies a slow. That slowed Senarth. It was like so minor that it was pretty much imperceptible, but it was just enough that when also combined with, there was a Death Knight talent called, I forget, it was like some Ghoul Claws thing, where it was like your Ghoul's auto attacks will apply a slow or something like that to whatever target you're hitting. So that Ghoul slow also affected Senarth. So the Ghoul slow, when combined with the slow from the Frostfire Belt, was just enough to prevent Senarth from reaching her platform long enough for her to get off another Chilling Blast. And that is just like the fucking peak of jank. The fact that people actually managed to figure that out, I think the person who figured it out was somebody in my guilds. My guild, I think I mentioned before, is like a bunch of like theory crafter people, occasional excellence, like a lot of people from the Monk Discord are in here, so they're like experts at doing like that log diving stuff, right? So a bunch of them were looking through logs trying to figure out why this was happening, and they realized that Senarth was affected by slows, and then after talking with other people and putting two and two together, they had the realization of, oh my god, the slows are what's causing this issue. And then they confirmed with some people at Blizzard that that's what was happening, and then when the people at Blizzard made that change to make Senarth not be, or to fix Senarth's Chilling Blast, they checked in with those people, confirmed is what actually changed the thing with Senarth cannot be slowed, and yeah, the actual change was Senarth cannot be slowed. But, you know, Blizzard's not going to try to explain this whole saga in the patch notes to people, so they just put Senarth cannot be slowed. But I think the full lore behind that Senarth change is a bit amusing and showcases some of the incredible jank that exists with Dragonflight's code. And I can also equip my staff. Nice. So I've gotten all of my higher item level stuff. My druid is looking he's looking something. I don't know. It's definitely an outfit. And let me do this other dragon riding quest. One of the things about like Dragonflight questing is it's kind of hard to say like which quests are actually efficient. Like, is this actually efficient? I don't know. I mean, these quests seem relatively fast, but they are only one at a time. But then at the same time, there's like pretty efficient quest lines after this, which is the main reason why I'm fairly certain this is worth doing. But it's really hard to answer where exactly the jumping off point should be in Waking Shores. And honestly, Waking Shores campaign is one of the faster campaigns. Almost fucked that up. Almost went a little bit too early. And see, my vigor is like kind of messed up. Oh, but the race will reset my vigor, I think. I need to clear my bags at some point. Alright, we're 45 minutes in and I'm level 64. Honestly, this feels pretty solid. For reference, the time to beat, so to speak, for me, is 4.5 hours. So that was my time on my Paladin. I can definitely do better than that. It's not even like a question. My Paladin run was mega casual, super inefficient. I think at the time I said I was just doing it to, like, test out a few new things. I didn't even call it a speed run. There's a lot of, like, stuff that I just didn't even worry about. So this one should be significantly faster. I don't know exactly how fast. It is one of those things where I haven't really done a ton of runs to actually test it. So if anything, this run that I'm doing right now is going to be a pretty good benchmark. This is going to let me know what I can expect in terms of, I'm ready to open the dragon riding track. I'll do that, and then head over here. This will let me know what to expect, at least in terms of how fast the leveling is. And then talk to you, tell me about dragon races. Did I already do it? Yeah, okay, I can just go turn in the quest. I always forget about that. So there we go. Ride this dragon. I'm gonna mess with my talents while I do this. Little forced flight. Put a second point into well-honed instincts. Yeah, my friend told me flashing claws is probably the better option while leveling. It's a tough call because, like, the main problem is if you're going down to Rage of the Sleeper, you're not going to get it until very late. So by the time you actually pick up Rage of the Sleeper, it's, like, hard to say whether it's actually worth it. Here we're going to Hearthstone, just to immediately head back to the Ruby Life Shrine. And I think, at least until I do something slightly different in the run, which I will be experimenting with dungeons. Not like spamming dungeons, but I'll be experimenting with doing dungeons just for the quests. Ah, shit, here we go again. But, you know, thankfully this one is only about a minute long. So I figured I'd at least still record something to fill in this little gap. What can I talk about? Oh yeah, so at some point in the run, I'm going to mention that, like, my cat forced open my door, and then I'm going to say something to the effect of, oh yeah, and I have this really funny story about my cat, and I'll start here, and I'll get to the point where it involves my cat later. TLDR, it's not that interesting. Basically, I had a bunch of boxes laid out in my room, and when I was trying to unpack the boxes and, like, sort through all the stuff, my cat kept trying to climb into the boxes and sitting on top of the papers that I was sorting through, and it made it really difficult to work. So, yeah, I'm gonna mention that cat story later on. That's the entire thing. You're not missing much. Yeah, okay, I think it's working now. Yeah, it's really frustrating when this stuff happens. At this point, it is fairly consistent. I'm going to try and turn sounds off because I think what happened there is, I don't know if it came across, but there was, like, a cinematic and a bunch of sounds played, and I think the whole thing about, like, the sound channels being fucked up is actually correct, and that's one of the major reasons. So I'm going to turn sound off at this point. I'm not going to risk it. I don't know how you can release a game this poorly optimized. It's just insane. And once again, before anybody thinks they're cute, it is purely entirely on Blizzard's end. This is just an only World of Warcraft issue. Do not have this issue with any other games, and there are tons of other people experiencing literally the exact same problem that I am, and there is no solution that I found that works. I've seen posts saying, like, oh, I fixed it or something like that, and I've tried it, and it just does not work for me. So, I don't know. It's incredibly frustrating. At least now I know that I can just quickly restart the game. So I think that is, like I said before, a huge step in the right direction for, like, you know, my willingness to actually stream and play this game or on recording. Just because it is really demoralizing when you just have technical issues that you can't really solve. And the fact that I managed to at least find a somewhat workarounds solution during this run is very helpful. Oh no. I got a backfire. Your size, speed, and agility are fucked. Okay. Yeah, maybe it wasn't the best idea to use the flamethrower. But that is something where I'm honestly experimenting with it. I think if I find that the flamethrower malfunctions, like, more than, you know, 75% of the time, I don't know what the exact ratio is for how often it succeeds versus how often it fails. But if I find that it's, like, malfunctioning most of the time, I just won't use it in my next actual run. But I at least think it's one of those things where it deserves to be actually tested. Because it could be good. And I'll never know until I really give it a try. But it's hard to really give it a try outside of, like, a full speedrun setting. Because in that case, you know, if you're just testing it in individual, like, instances, you don't really get the full picture. Okay, just tag these two guys. I only need the two cliffs, I think. I think outside of, yeah, after I get the 2 enraged cliffs, it's just the generic bonus objective, which I can do further on in the zone. I still don't know what causes those cliffs to just die when they're low health. I think the idea is they're supposed to be breaking into little earth elementals, but that's like pretty rough as far as animation standards go for Blizzard. Uh, it is frustrating. Like there's something weird about having to do like one of these speedruns without any noise or something. Maybe it bothers some people. Let me know what you think, actually. If you've gotten to this point of the video, where the sound is off, tell me what you think in terms of like, do you care at all? Is it, do you prefer sound? Do you prefer no sound? Is it like no difference? I'm not entirely sure because I think for me, there is something soothing about having like the, spell sound effects, etc. It's like familiar and it makes me feel like I'm not just like talking in a complete void. I don't know. Maybe that sounds weird, but that's just like it's like a little mental thing, right? But it feels strange having to do one of these things just talking with like a completely quiet game. I'm just not used to doing this. I think this is where like a lot of people put like music in the backgrounds, and I mean I put music in the background of my like guide videos. The main issue with putting music in the background here is it's not something that I'm really going to listen to while I actually record, just because I feel like that would just make me way too distracted listening to music. I usually listen to music when I'm just trying to focus on something. And right now, the thing that I'm trying to focus on isn't necessarily the run. It's actually really more talking because it does require a decent amount of focus to, keep commentary and discussion going throughout an entire run, at least with myself, right? It's not the kind of thing you can do while like half paying attention. It's one of the reasons why I stop talking when I do really need to focus on something, because, if I really, really need to make sure I do something correctly in the run, I don't want to have it be fucked up because I'm, rambling about some stupid topic. But anyways, I'm gonna hope that turning off the sound effects fixes that issue, and the problem is like not gonna crop up again, and I can actually talk without having to, get myself interrupted, and then I'll have to go back in editing and fix the entire thing. Which I mean, I'm gonna have to already do anyways, right? I'm not gonna have the same problem happen again with the paladin video because that one was just it was so frustrating. Uh, where just half the time the audio just wasn't functioning correctly. At least I know why. At the time, I was just losing like my mind over trying to solve it. So we pinpointed the problem. I've tested a few solutions and I found some workarounds, but obviously still don't have a surefire silver bullet solution for that thing. So I guess on that note, if you do think you have a way to fix this audio issue, like let me know. Um, I've looked, I've spent a lot of time searching for potential solutions, but hey, if there's something I overlooked, if you think you have like the perfect way to fix this problem, I am all ears. I will test anything at this point. I just want to have this problem over and done with. Because that is actually, like I said before, it's one of the reasons why I don't like doing these speedruns. There are obviously a lot of other reasons why I don't like doing the speedruns. Like I said before, not necessarily don't like doing the speedruns, but can't really afford the time. In addition to the cost, of course, the amount of time it takes to earn that gold through like selling carries or whatever, or like prep all the items and things like that. It is a lot of time investment to get one of these runs done. Like I've said before, it's not as simple as just I open WoW and I decide I'm going to do a speed run. Absolutely not like that. And that's not even accounting for like the stuff I have to do after the fact in terms of like editing the video, doing all like the thumbnail, etc. That takes up a lot of time as well. Basically, what I'm saying is, doing a speed run like this is not easy. It is not the speed run itself. The speed run itself, if you just want to get items and like do it yourself, it's not like face roll easy, but it's not the hardest thing in the world. But making a speed run video like this one, yeah, definitely not easy. Definitely something that I need to spend a lot of time doing correctly. But I will say, normally I don't hate this, but I think I've come to the acceptance of like, if you want to see more of these speedrun videos, because I've whatchamacallit, what's it called? I've gotten a lot of comments. Yeah, it's probably a good way to say it. Like either messages on Discord or a really bad one recently, which I'll probably discuss lately. I will say that the really bad comment I got is thankfully, I've been forgetting to use my banners. I also just realized, but really bad comment was thankfully not the norm. It was definitely the exception. But I got a comment that was like on one of my guild. I say guilds. It's my video that I make of like highlights from my guild's raids, and on one of those clips, somebody basically said like, "Stop this garbage content and make more leveling videos," and that like genuinely offended me. I think that was probably one of the most offensive things I've ever had said to me, like in YouTube comments and stuff. Just because it's like, the fact that somebody thinks that they are just able to tell me what to make, and it's like I'm gonna make whatever fucking videos I want, for starters. Like, if I'm just not in the mood to do a speedrun, I'm not going to do a speedrun, and nobody's going to force me to do it. Like, at the end of the day, I'm doing this because I want to, but there are also certain factors that prevent me from doing it, even if I do want to do a speedrun. Sometimes, like I said, the gold cost or the time cost, right? But the fact that somebody thinks that they can tell me, stop making X video and focus more on that was, like, shocking. Like, obviously, I've heard of other YouTubers saying that they've experienced that, but I always think like, oh, that's the extreme. That's like, you only get that if you're like a large channel. But the fact that somebody just fucking said that to me was like, fucking hell, man. If you're that type of person, I don't want you watching my content. Like, fuck off. Like, if you want to enjoy the speedruns whenever they're out, like, I'm glad, awesome. I'm, happy that you enjoy the speedruns, but I'm my own person, right? I can make whatever I want. And especially in terms of the guild videos, I think I made this very clear, at least in my Discord, right? Like, I'm not going to make a whole big YouTube post about it. I generally dislike doing YouTube posts unless it's for, announcements that I think, somebody even outside of my Discord would probably want to know, like stream announcements or things like that, or important announcements like, when my cat died and I was really not in a position to finish any of the work that I planned for Dragonflight's launch, which was unfortunate, but it is what it is, right? I was not in a position to finish making videos at that point in time. So I put out an announcement on my channel and I was like, hey, just so you know I said I was going to make all these videos. I'm scrapping like 2/3 of them because I am not in a good spot. Better, of course, but it's still, one of those things, right? But yeah, that's the kind of stuff that I make like YouTube announcements for, but at least on my Discord, I posted about when I was, initially experimenting with the shorts. And I kind of shied away from YouTube shorts for a while and just short form content in general because I never really had something that I wanted to make a short of. And I always looked at shorts as a way of, you know, oh, it's just kind of like cheap like Zoomer content, right? It's like people can't stomach like a 5-minute guide. They need to have their information in like a 1-minute video. And I still honestly dislike that. The idea that like some people will try to shove like actual like informative content into like a short because they think it's the better thing to do or whatever. What the fuck? Why did I not get credit for this thing? I guess I didn't click on it. Oh, yeah, so then it tells you to click it right. I do not think short form content is a good way to convey like actual information, like important stuff. Like guides, I will never do. I think the only exception I made to that is I made like a little quick teaser for one of my mini guides because it was already like I made a 3-minute like short guide about Winds of Wisdom, which was already like a very short like, hey, this is an important tip that I think you should know about. And I mean, admittedly, that video did extremely well, right? It was, in my opinion, a really important tip. But because it was already only 3 minutes long, I figured, yeah, this is the kind of thing that I could realistically, turn into a short. And, I'll say like, hey, if you want a bit more information that isn't covered in this 30-second video, go check out the full 3 minutes, right? That's reasonable. But I generally didn't want to do that with anything else because I feel like unless I can convey the entire important topic in 30 seconds to a minute, right? It's just not good to use a short. It's honestly like, what's the word? I wanted to say irresponsible, but like it's technically not irresponsible. It's not like you're endangering somebody by making a YouTube short. but I would say it's bad practice, I think is probably, yeah, that's a better way to say it. Bad practice to put like try to condense a long informative video. And the reality is a lot of my guides, I tend to cover like widespread information, like across a lot of stuff about one particular subject that you can't really condense down into that period of time. So that wouldn't necessarily work well in a short. But I still wanted to experiment with it, honestly, not just because I think it's going to like do well. Like a lot of my friends are like, oh, YouTube shorts are like the new hot thing. You know, you have to do it. Oh, yeah, it backfired again. Okay, I'm taking this off my bars. 2 backfires in a row means I don't use it anymore. But I guess on that note, the idea of like following trends and doing like the new hot thing is something I generally stay away from. And when I say generally, I mean I stay away from it 100% of the time. Even when it comes to YouTube shorts, like I was months late to that if I was following a trend. People who were hopping on that trend were doing it like literally half a year earlier. I only did it because some of my friends were messing around with it. And I was like, yeah, you know, it's something I could experiment with just for fun. But more, I wanted to kind of polish my editing skills because, you know, I do obviously all my video editing, right? And I like learning new tricks and learning new things for video editing because one of the main things, and this is like more like meta YouTube stuff, right? One of the main things that can, you know, at a high level set a channel apart is ability to put together like good videos. And while I do like to do some like unedited, just full speedrun stuff like this one, I do like to have a lot of videos where I spend a lot more time carefully editing everything, making it much more polished. And, you know, as my channel has, you know, gone on, I've spent a lot more time editing each individual video because eventually, you know, stuff gets added to your toolkit and you want each video to be like as good as the last, but then you learn new things that you want to implement in your videos and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. On it goes, right? But that is something that I think is important, right? If you want to have a good YouTube channel or whatever. And a lot of people don't do that. I've seen a lot of people who their editing quality is the same today as it was 10 years ago in some cases, which is astounding. And I just, especially in the cases where it's not very good. And one thing I will never understand is how somebody could do the same thing for 10 years, you know, at no point say maybe I should try to like research and look for ways to improve, especially like if you're doing YouTube for 10 years and some of the channels that are like actually trying to do it as a career. If you are actually trying to do YouTube as a career, right, then bare minimum of like, hey, I'm going to do research and, you know, try to learn how to do better editing and stuff like that. And some people genuinely don't. There's also the you know thing of trying out like different formats and seeing what works because you never know. Sometimes you think something's not going to work. I've had I think a good example of you know things that I used to not like is I always used to frown on why is my bark skin activating my I don't know if I have like an old macro from way back in the day, but I really did not want to use incarnation there, and for whatever reason it got activated. I must have had some old barkskin macro that like popped berserk or something for whatever fucking reason. I don't know. This is a really old druid, like I said. You know, I played this back in Legion. So I probably made some macro a long time ago, forgot about it, and now it just fucked me over mildly. What was I saying? Right, yeah. So when I first started my channel, I remember only wanting to do long form content. You know, my first guide was like 36 minutes or something like that. And I remember thinking that, you know, I don't want to do like the short guides that don't teach you anything. And I think there's something to be said, right, about like short not necessarily meaning bad, just in terms of video length. I'm not saying YouTube shorts, right? Like you know, I'll discuss YouTube shorts in more detail as the story goes on. But specifically about the video length, right? Like my recent guide for 10 to 60 leveling is 15 minutes, and it covers Alliance in addition to Horde. And my original guide was pretty much only Horde. Oh, I need to speak to Rathian. Okay. Yeah, my original guide was pretty much only Horde, and it was like over double the length of my new guide. So obviously, the quality didn't go down. I spent even more time compared to my original video making sure that new one was polished. But what changed is, well, two things. One, the rare mob section, which took up a significant and, in hindsight, kind of boring and repetitive section of my guide, that rare mob section I took and put in a separate video. Because there's a lot of people who just don't care about that. And a lot of people express that in comments and stuff. Not everybody wants to go hunt down all the rare mobs. They don't need to know about that stuff. They just want to know the basic routing. And that's fine. So what I did this time is, okay, well, instead of just making one gargantuan video that people have to sift through to find the specific information they want, I'm going to make this video specific about the routing, and then I'm going to make the rare mob video its own separate thing. And I'll mention it, like, hey, if you want to learn more about rares, go check out this other video. And I mean, that's the kind of thing where I guess I always disliked the idea of that when I was first starting YouTube, because I always thought that people did that specifically because, like, oh, you're, doubling up on views, right? You're getting 2 of my views for 1. And I think a lot of people, have that negative mentality for it. And I don't blame them because, like I said, I used to think the exact same thing. But the reality is, from a YouTuber perspective, it really isn't like, uh, I mean, it is good practice, right? It helps your channel. If it wasn't, I obviously wouldn't be doing it, but it's not like, I'm not doing it like, aha, yes, I'm going to min-max the amount of views I'm getting. I'm doing it because after, looking at what people actually wanted in terms of like, I want specific information on this and I don't want to sift through a 30-minute video, I realized it was better for me and for the people watching it to split that topic into 2 separate videos. And by experimenting with that and being willing to, over time, say, what if I just make like shorter videos on, specific topics instead of making a exhaustive, long list, right? Then, maybe that is better. And I found that, yeah, it was better. There are still exceptions. I still think some channels definitely overdo it, especially if like certain topics are tangentially related and you still split them into, 2 videos. Like if they're close enough, maybe tangential is not the right word to use in that context, but if they're like closely related topics and you still make 2 separate videos about them, I don't know. Like, unless one of them is already like 30 minutes and you're like, yeah, just for the sake of, time, right? Then I can understand it. But some people will make like 2 5-minute videos that are basically about the same thing with minor differences. And it's like, okay, buddy, at that point, just make one video. And especially, that's one of the things that I remember debating with my actual 10 to 60 guide in terms of Horde versus Alliance. There's a significant amount of overlap in my 10 to 60 video with the Horde and Alliance routes. A lot of stuff is exactly the same between the 2 factions. And therefore, logically, because I'm like, hey, I think that, people who want to learn about leveling, they're not going to want to have to click on 2 videos. I'll just kind of basically not repeat the overlap. And I'll say this part's Horde, this part's Alliance, this part is both. And I mean, at the time, that format makes sense. I still don't think I did it badly. But I did receive, I would say, enough feedback that people disliked that and would have preferred just one on Horde, one on Alliance. Like, I just want to follow. Like a lot of people, the way they described it, which like I don't watch videos like that, at least for guides necessarily. They wanted to just like keep it open, like on their tab, and like play through the guide as they leveled up, and as they got to like a new level bracket, they would play that section of the guide. I think that's just weird. Like, it's a 15-minute guide. If I'm watching a video, I just let the entire thing play and I just absorb all that information, and then if I'm doing the thing and I need reference, I go back and find that specific part of the video. So that's one of those things where I'm not saying that people are watching it the wrong way. Obviously, the way people watch it is something you need to take into consideration. Everybody's different. But what I'm more saying is, when I was initially considering the format for how I wanted to do my video, I mean, I only really had my own perspective, and like I asked my friends, right? And nobody pointed this out to me. There's Rathian, there we go, you activated. Okay. No, like none of my friends pointed this out to me, not saying like, oh, how dare they like not bring it to my attention. No, they were all like, yeah, seems fine. Because I think a lot of them probably have the same viewing experiences like I do, where we watch something exhaustively, and then if we need extra details, we go back and look. But a lot of people express that because the thing jumped between Alliance and Horde, because there was overlap, it made it hard for them to follow if they were just watching the entire way through. Which, like I said, not something I considered at first, but I can understand that. And the reality for me is this is where it's like, honestly, making a separate Alliance and Horde video in terms of like YouTube performance, it would have been better for me. Like, that's the kind of thing where I remember thinking, I was almost like, ooh, should I make 2 videos? Because like, I mean, you can kind of double dip with the views. A lot of people will watch both, right? So it does kind of help me out in terms of if I can make 2 videos on effectively the same exact subject. But that's where I'm thinking, oh no, I don't think that would be good. I think that would harm the viewer experience. And then I didn't do that. And then people are telling me they would have preferred that. So it's like, you know, sometimes I don't even know what to think in terms of it. And it's like maybe all the things that I thought were YouTubers just being greedy are like, actually good viewing practice things. Who knows? But then, like, of course, there are things that people do that are really greedy, obviously. But like that's a completely separate story. I don't know. I got into a weird tangent. Oh yeah, the reason I started saying this in the beginning was like because shorts and the fact that I can't always do shorts or I can't always do speedruns, and I was experimenting with shorts. But one thing I posted about in my Discord is that shorts will never take away from the time I spend on my actual videos. Usually, if I'm not going to make a video, I'm just not going to make a video. It's like I don't sit down and I'm like, I'm going to force myself to make a video today, right? Like there are people like that who do daily uploads. And I remember trying to do daily uploads years ago, and I didn't like it because I felt like a lot of my videos were just garbage. And to a certain extent, I think early on it was important to do that, mostly because of the practice that I got while editing. Because let me tell you, when you spend like 6 hours a day inside of Adobe Premiere, you learn how to use Adobe Premiere pretty fucking fast. And I already had taken like a bunch of courses on it in college, but I learned infinitely more making, quite frankly, shitty YouTube videos than I did actually like in any of my video editing classes. It's one of those things where everybody will tell you about literally anything. Experience helps. It's just kind of a fact of life. So the fact that I was making a bunch of shitty videos obviously maybe wasn't great for my channel, but what it did allow me to do is get a lot more practice and learn new things about video editing. So then when I did start making good videos, I now had infinitely more practice and infinitely more experience. So not saying it's not like important to do daily uploads early on, something like it to consider, I suppose. But one thing I've never wanted to do is just vomit out YouTube videos for the sake of vomiting out YouTube videos. Just covering like any old topic. Like, think of anything, like, think of the most generic thing in World of Warcraft, right? Like, the creation catalyst. Like, literally, a fucking idiot with no brain can figure out the creation catalyst. I don't know. I was trying to think of, like, what is the stupidest way to describe somebody? Like, how can I make somebody sound really dumb? And, of course, the most brilliant wordplay came to my mind is an idiot with no brain, right? But my point being is somebody with absolutely no idea of like how to read external sources or, do testing or whatever can figure out the creation catalyst. It's pretty fucking simple. There are some like nuances of, oh, you have to, I have to Rathian, yeah. Okay. There's some nuances with like how to fill up the bar for getting like the catalyst charge and like the place that they put the quest at first. Now they move the quest, but early on the quest was in a slightly weird spot, but like it's a pretty simple system. In fact, to the point where I was actually like I was considering covering the creation catalyst because I heard that they were changing the acquisition, and I'm like, Blizzard's going to make it like extremely complicated and I'm going to have to make a guide on how to do this. And then I looked into it and I'm like, this is piss easy. I'm not going to make a guide on this. Like anybody can figure this out. But if you Google creation catalyst guide, there's like a million fucking just copy paste videos from people of covering the exact same subject. And that's something that just like, man, I could never do that. And the shitty thing is, I think like in many cases, that is just how you fucking, make money as a YouTuber, right? It is literally just like vomit out generic videos that like people will just click on because they think it contains important information. And let's be real, I mean, obviously, much easier to cover a boring, obvious topic than it is to cover, an interesting topic that requires research. Because if the topic is actually interesting and requires research, you have to put in way more effort. And, it's like a lot of the annoying thing is a lot of the videos that I've done that did require a lot of research and testing, some of them just don't do well. Because a lot of times there's certain topics that, somebody may not know what they don't know. Is something that I like to say. You don't know what you don't know. If there's like a really interesting trick that somebody could be using, like I think one of the most interesting tricks that I showcased that like I looked and there's very few topics actually covering it. And I made a pretty good, in my opinion, video showcasing how to do it is the Chromie time trick on how to farm like mounts and stuff. It was especially relevant with farming like Falling Flame and stuff like that. And I showcased how to do that and how to like phase yourself into Chromie time. And honestly, that video didn't perform super well. And I think it's extremely useful information that a lot of people would benefit from. But it's like such a weird topic where it's like, how do you word that and how do you advertise that in a way that makes people say, huh, that sounds interesting. I should learn how to do this. And at the end of the day, that is honestly one of the, hardest parts about YouTube. It's marketing, really. It's figuring out how to word something correctly, how to make it interesting, etc., etc. But yeah, it is really not always an easy thing to figure out the right way to word. And a lot of those videos, that's the problem. They won't do super well. So you'll do all this time researching, all this time testing, and then it'll end up not performing super well. But then, you can make a video that's super basic where, by comparison, right, my video on Winds of Wisdom required very few testing runs. It was a basic thing of like, I observed that there was like a noticeable difference in the leveling experience. I recorded my leveling runs on retail compared to the testing servers, and then I did the math and I figured out which level it was faster to level in with Winds of Wisdom and which it was faster to level in with the Chromie Time rework. It really did not take me that long. That took me like maybe 8 hours at most to do all that research, all that stuff. And the video was 2 minutes long. It was easy to make. And that video got like 200,000 views. And it's impossible to say like what topics are going to do well, what aren't. But what you can generally get a good idea of is how long it will take to make a certain video. Which is why if a video is really easy to make, well, a lot of people think might as well make it, because even if it's a boring, really non-informative video, hey, if it gets like a bunch of clicks somehow, that's a win. And I hate doing that. I can't fucking stand it. So the problem for me is like, if I'm not inspired to do something, like if I don't actually think it'll be useful, it'll be relevant information, I just can't be fucking bothered to work on it. And maybe that's something that I should probably fix. I don't know. It's like, not necessarily for like the, how do I word it? Like the quality of my channel. I think that is absolutely something where the quality of my channel will be better as long as I stick with that mentality, because I do not think that making generic videos leads to a better YouTube channel, not even slightly. But I don't know, in terms of like building a successful YouTube channel, maybe that is something that I would have to do. And it's like, maybe I just need to get it over with and accept the fact that that's something I will need to do. I don't fucking know. It's tough. It's a fucking tough thing. Finishing my coffee real quick, which is already kind of cold at this point, but whatever. Ah, right. Mounts up again. I also don't really think herbalism was worth it, because so far, at the very least, it doesn't look like I've had any situations where it was faster to land and regain vigor. It's just, you have so much vigor with the talent changes. Just does not seem like there's a point. Yeah, and even if you were starting at like with absolutely no dragon riding talents, yeah, there wouldn't really be much of a point. Shine Guard. Touch this up. I can shift into cat form for this because it's slightly faster. Does travel form work for this? Yeah, it does. Okay, that's actually even faster. Nice. Get rid of this. And I can turn in... That's... Let's see. What else was I saying? I forget. Oh yeah, I keep beating around the bush and like not finishing my points. Okay, there we go. On to Onaran Plains. 1 second. Just adjusting my headphones real quick. All right. Yeah, I keep like losing my focus on the shorts, but yeah, the thing about the shorts is like making the shorts obviously is very easy, because it's 30 seconds to a minute. The editing is like fairly easy. I'm mostly like, I sometimes do like special effects, minimal special effects, and like, a little bit of like editing in terms of like keyframe animations. Nothing super fancy with those. It's mostly just taking a funny moment from my guild's raids and, making a little video out of it. And it's also fun with like the little subtitles and stuff that I get to add. Basically, what I'm saying is making a short is infinitely more fun from like an editing perspective and just like a video making perspective in terms of like my enjoyment of it compared to making literally anything else. Because one of the nice things about making those shorts, if you haven't watched them, if you haven't watched the shorts at all, I would recommend checking them out because like I actually think they're quite entertaining. Otherwise, I wouldn't be making them. But they're basically like the stuff that I've settled on for actual consistent shorts content is clips from my guild's raids or dungeons that I do with my friends and stuff. They're basically entertainment focused. So whereas like a lot of my actual videos are more for like speed runs, guides, things like that, like more informative things. And even if I will ramble and tell stories during my speed runs, which like people find entertaining, I get that. But a lot of this is just for testing purposes. Uh, I can still I still focus mostly on, informative guide stuff for the videos. But the shorts are like pure entertainment, right? They're not meant to be informative outside of, like I said, that one example. They're all just like funny moments from my guild's raids of like, oh, our resto druid said something goofy and, we all like make fun of him for it. Or, somebody fucks up a mechanic and then like, it just causes the raid to wipe. There's like a bunch of like little goofy clips like that, which, I only make shorts of things that happen in my raid that I genuinely thought were funny. Like in a lot of those cases, I enjoy editing it because while I'm editing it, I'm like remembering the thing that happened with the shorts. What did I? Oh, I see. I see what's happening here. Why did I do that? Um, yeah, I don't even know what I'm doing at this point. My druid muscle memory is definitely not great, as you can probably tell. But yeah, so a lot of times while I'm editing the shorts, I'm enjoying it. I'm laughing because I'm remembering, that funny moment from my raid, which inspired me to make that video in the first place. So it's a more enjoyable experience overall than editing some, even if it is important, admittedly kind of boring informative video. And I try to make my guides fun. I try to put like little jokes and quips and stuff in them. I don't want my guides to be like Bueller, like the most boring thing you've ever heard. But, it's a guide, right? It's not meant to be like, knee slappingly funny or whatever. It is exactly what it is. So the end result is that a lot of times when I'm editing my guides, especially when it's like, I'm just trying to find the right way to convey the information. I need to get all the tool tips and I need to overlay that stuff. And, it's not entertaining for me because I already know all the information, right? So I'm getting nothing out of the video itself, but I am actually getting a lot out of my shorts because I'm getting to relive a funny moment from my guild's raid. So point being is even if I wasn't making any videos, I would still be making the shorts because I never started making the shorts because I thought they would do well. I started making the shorts because I wanted to, because I was like, hey, this will be fun. The first one was just purely, well, I made some short content that was kind of like a YouTube short, but it actually wasn't in the format of a short. It was like an actual video. Oh, here's actually a case where gumshoes might come in handy, or where picking an herb might come in handy, because I've like sputtered out here. So let's see how good this vigor regeneration actually is. So loop this. And, oh, that is massive. Yeah, 2 full bars. That was actually a time save. Okay, I take it back. In the case like that, where you just like completely run out of vigor, herbalism's actually kind of huge. Look at that regeneration rate. Holy hell. That is good. Okay, that was like a full fucking vigor regen. I'm down with that. Yeah, what was I saying? Oh yeah, the first one. So I would say the first of that like type of content that I ever tried to do, if you don't count like the WoW forum post videos, which were also kind of like more entertainment focused, did those a while ago. I am bringing those back soon-ish. So if you really liked the old WoW forum videos, I am doing them in a slightly adjusted format that is probably more broadly appealing. And honestly, I would say more entertaining to watch. There is like a kind of element of, looking back on your content with like time really puts it in a different perspective. Because I remember watching one of my WoW forum videos from a while ago to, try to get an idea of what I did back then. So I knew how to, properly replicate it and keep the same soul as before. But what I realized is like, it's actually really boring. There's like individual moments where I think if I were to edit it more, I don't know, edit it better, for lack of a better word. If I did a better job editing the videos, I think it could actually be quite entertaining. But my editing was really bad, and I'm surprised that like not a lot of people brought it up to me. It's the kind of thing where, I would have thought that more people would have given me shit of like, "Hey, the editing on this is garbage." Because like it's not the kind of thing that I would leave a comment on somebody's video, but like if I had gone back and watched one of my older videos and it was somebody else, I would have thought to myself like, "Yeah, this editing's really rough." And it I'd like to think that in terms of those types of structured videos, my editing has come a long way. But I'm just surprised that I didn't realize it was as bad as it was. I don't know. Either way, yeah, I'm gonna do it much better. Bring that series back. Like I think it's been has it been like 2 years? I think it's been almost 2 years since I made those WoW forum videos. Um, and yeah, I'll do a new one. Is the current plan. With like a twist, obviously. Not the exact same format, but similar. And already level 66. Honestly, this is pretty good. I might actually abandon the Centaur campaign a little bit early because I think it's not even that like this is really inefficient, but there's more inefficient areas that I could just be doing if I'm this far along already. Because we're only at like an hour and 30 minutes. Anyways, what was I saying? Right, the WoW forum videos and stuff like that. So gonna do more stuff like that. But in the first actual short I did, kind of, or at least that style of like, my guild's antics was back in my guild Beef Society, which unfortunately disbanded. But it is actually cool. Like on that note, I was in a guild's Beef Society that I raided with an SOD in the start of Sepulchre. Really cool guys, had a lot of fun with them, and then they kind of got burnt out and quit the game. They've come back in Dragonflight. Like I've talked to them a little bit, but most of them are like playing casually. But one of the officers did want to continue playing, and we raided a bit again in later on in Sepulchre. We both joined the same guilds, and he eventually went to a different guild, and I joined my current guild. And he actually recently joined Occasional Excellence as well, because he was like his guild didn't work out, and his like schedule changed, and he wasn't able to play with his old guild, but he was like looking for a new guild, and our times worked, and he applied here, and he passed this trial, so now I get to raid with one of my friends again, so that's pretty cool. Just a little tangent, right? But my guild at the time was doing a drunk raid, and I did a drunk raid video, which that one performed awfully. It was terrible, and that's the thing where it's like, if people think that I was initially doing shorts, like my shorts actually at this point perform better than my main videos lately, and which is like kind of funny. But early on, when I was doing shorts, it was absolutely not from an angle of I want to get views. It was like, this is going to destroy my channel, and I'm going to do it anyway. And then the opposite happened, which was like cool, I guess. But my first video that I consider in this format was the drunk raid video. That's where like I think it all started. And that video, I think by the time when I unlisted it, because it was just not getting any views, it had like 900 views. It didn't even hit 1,000 views, which like for one of my videos, I don't expect much, but like I would hope that at least my videos would hit 1,000 views. That's like really, really, really bad, but still like, okay, at least it's like 4 digits, right? Like it's better than nothing. Didn't even hit that. So absolutely abysmal performance. And then I did, I didn't do anything else like that for a while. And months later, in same guilds, but in Sofo, before they quit the game and they stopped raiding, I made a few like short, like I don't even know what to call it because it wasn't YouTube shorts, but like short little moments from my dungeons. Sometimes they were like 2-3 minutes long, little things like that. And those ones did okay, still not great. I think like the best performing one, which really surprised me, got like 5,000 views. Which, considering how bad the drunk raid one did, I was like really happy that one of them even cracked 5,000 views. And then it completely fell off. Like that's the thing about those videos. They get like a short burst of views and then they completely fell off. And I did one more that I spent a ton of time editing. Literally, I spent must have been like 2 entire days editing this one video. It was Hunter, I called it Hunter Brain, and it was one of our hunters showed up to raid completely drunk, and he effectively completely trolled our first night of Mythic Anduin progression. Like, this guy was just fucking out of his mind drunk. It was wild. So that was like one of the funniest raid nights I've ever had, and I turned that into like a 5 minute video ish, and I spent a shit ton of time editing it. And while my editing definitely has improved since that one, like I can actually rewatch that one now, and it's like still fairly close to my current editing style. I was already like kind of closing in on where my shorts are at now, and I'm still mostly happy with the way I edited that. I think it was a good video. And unfortunately, it's one of those where like I would say, "Oh yeah, you should go and watch it," but I haven't listed it, and I just not entirely sure if that one I want to bring back. For a variety of reasons, mostly related to the guild that I was in at the time. A lot of nice people in that guild who I'm still friends with, but there was a lot of other problems with that particular guild. It was the one right before the guild that I joined now. Definitely a lot of drama in that particular guild. So I'm probably going to keep that one unlisted, but I was really happy with that, and it got like 2,000 views. It was not good. So all of this to say, making YouTube shorts, when I finally decided, like, okay, instead of making these like short videos that are not actually shorts, that are just full regular YouTube videos, why don't I experiment with shorts? Because one of the advantages of that is it sometimes shows up in people's recommended, but most of the time it doesn't. A lot of the times YouTube won't like actively recommend a short to somebody in place of a video. They still do sometimes, which pisses me off because I don't want them to do that. In many ways, oh, my phone just pinged. In many ways, I want my shorts to be kind of somewhat detached from my other content. Like if you're watching my shorts, if you find one of them in the like shorts tab, great. If you like click on it on my Discord because you just need a laugh and want to watch some funny guild antics, great. But then if you want to watch my guides, I want somebody to be able to click on my channel and all of my guides are there, and it's not like, hey, here's like how to level from 10 to 60 in only 3 hours, and then here's Resto Druid gets hit by a truck or something. I don't know. I don't want them to be side by side. Even though I'm proud of both of them, it's for different reasons. I want them to be marketed towards different audiences. And unfortunately, YouTube doesn't really give you that much control over where your videos are recommended, which is a little bit annoying. But generally speaking, it's good about not overly mixing the two, which means that there's less of a downside if like my shorts absolutely bomb. Because something that a lot of people don't realize, this is like I haven't talked a ton about like YouTube meta stuff, but obviously, in case you don't know much about making YouTube videos, right? It's like I said before, just like speedruns are not as easy as just I'm going to do a speedrun and I'm going to turn on the game. Making YouTube videos is not as easy as pressing record and then saying like, oh, I'm just going to talk into the camera and upload a video. You can do that. It's not going to do well, right? And one of the biggest things about YouTube is marketing, how you market your videos, how you make your thumbnails, all that stuff. There are actually a lot of channels that I've seen that are still decently large, but could be significantly better if they put like even a modicum of effort into making good thumbnails, good titles, etc. It's a lot of people say, oh, clickbait this, clickbait that, but at the end of the day, you need to make sure people want to click on your video because, I've said there's 2 ways to do clickbait. You can either have clickbait that is, it's like a lot of people bring up the Veritasium video. I think it's a great example of, if you have a video that's genuinely interesting, you want to make sure that people actually click on it so that they get that genuinely interesting, useful information. And, maybe that can be considered clickbait, but it's important clickbait. And then, it's, I guess, up to the viewer to decide. But generally speaking, if you're confident in the quality of your video, then yeah, market it well. Make sure that people click on it. Because if somebody gets tricked into clicking on a video that they find extremely entertaining, are they going to be upset? Fuck no, they're not. So it's one of those things that like everybody who wants to actually make videos needs to consider. And there's a lot that fucking goes into that. And how did I get onto that subject? Oh yeah, right. So something that a lot of people don't realize about YouTube, especially if they're like fairly new to it and they don't fully understand how it works. A lot of people have asked me, like, not like viewers, right? But I think more like friends and family who don't necessarily understand how it works. when I explain this to them, they'll sometimes say like, why don't you just upload more videos? Right? It's like, well, if you're posting a video and it gets views, right, and you make like ad revenue off the videos, just make more videos. Just keep uploading more videos. And like, technically speaking, that should work, right? And there's a myriad of reasons why that doesn't just work. One of them I already discussed earlier, right? If you keep making a bunch of really crummy videos that, don't actually help people at all, it's just going to make your channel look bad, right? It's one of the things, like I said, I've, shied away from doing. But the other thing is YouTube only gives your channel a certain amount of like recommended space, right? Like that's how your videos get discovered. It's your video pops up in like the little recommended tab at the side. People say, "Oh, that looks moderately interesting," and then they click on it. Obviously, if somebody's already watched your channel for a while, they're going to watch your video, but then they're going to watch your video no matter what. The people who are going to watch my video no matter what are the people who are already subscribed to me and regularly look for my uploads whenever, I upload them, and they'll get like a notification or whatever. Which, like, I guess, is that where I'm supposed to be, like, responsible YouTuber of, like, make sure to smash that like button and hit that bell if you want to be notified, blah, blah, blah. But, like, that's how a lot of people find out if you upload, if they're, like, a fan of your channel or whatever. And other people are in my Discord, and I post to my Discord whenever I make a new video, so some people find out that way. But especially, in order to grow a channel, you need to get new viewers. That's just how that works, right? And new viewers aren't going to, in most cases, find out from your channel by like word of mouth. It's much harder to get people to find out about your channel from word of mouth than it is for something to just pop up in their recommended because the algorithm decided they might like it and get them to click on it. And you need to have a good thumbnail to get people to click on that. And it's significantly easier to grow your channel through that method than hoping one of your videos appeals to a large enough audience that they start, in person or like through text or whatever, recommending it to their friends saying, hey, you need to watch this video. Because like, I can tell you that me personally, I don't know about like everybody else, but me personally, I have like directly recommended a video to very few people. Like in recent memory, the two times when I've said like to somebody who isn't like maybe like World of Warcraft videos, I don't necessarily count that fully, which I know might seem like pointless because I'm a World of Warcraft channel, but whatever. Like obviously sometimes guides, right? Like raid leaders will recommend guides, but I'm more talking about like if I find a video really entertaining or really helpful and I'm like, oh, you should totally watch this, right? Like I don't do that a lot unless it's like, a dungeon guide or something. But the one thing that came to mind is like recently I told my mom to watch CoffeeZilla because I told my mom like, you are going to love these videos. Like this guy's a fucking genius. Go watch this. And like, that is the bar for me. Like I needed, like I've only ever recommended videos in like that niche case of like, it's fucking CoffeeZilla. The stuff he does is amazing. And like, I know my mom would enjoy that type of content. So I told her, go watch this. I generally don't just like recommend things to people like, hey, this video is really cool. You should check it out. Like, it's one of those things where if somebody doesn't like it, then you just kind of feel bad. You're like, oh, they're just like, oh, you're not like, oh, I didn't find that entertaining. You're just like, okay, well, that was disappointing, right? So I just generally am not the type of person to like go ahead and recommend things left, right, to people. So like my entire point is generally it's harder for word of mouth to actually. I need to I forget how to do this. It's like then 4, 3, or no 2, 3. Okay, I just always just fucking YOLO guess that one. Where's the quest line next? I don't know. Oh right, it's the green dragon thing. I should also refresh my consumables before I forget. How did I get off on this tangent again? Right, shorts. Yeah, so a lot of things, one thing that a lot of people don't realize is your ad space on YouTube is limited. The way that your video gets found is obviously through recommendations, and when YouTube recommends your video, they're not going to give you like, as many recommendations as you want. If you upload like 1 million videos, YouTube's not just gonna give you 1 million impressions. There's a lot of other people on the platform. Your channel is going to get a set amount of impressions, and then YouTube is going to, if they think that, oh yeah, this video will perform well because they want to make more money off it, right? YouTube wants people to stay on the platform longer. Their algorithm's going to say this video is performing really well, like it has a really high click-through rate. I'm going to recommend it to more people. And just because you uploaded a million videos doesn't mean that like they're actually going to be recommended to people. And if they don't get recommended, they die. So one of the problems then is you want to make sure that whenever your video does get recommended to somebody, you're putting your best foot forward. You're making sure that whatever video that is like the best representation of your work. You don't want your limited ad revenue to be like, or your limited ad space, your recommendations to be shown to somebody and have it be like your worst video. And then maybe they don't click on it and they're like, that video looks shit. I'm not going to click on that. And then YouTube's like, oh, wow, this person doesn't like X channel. I guess I'm just not going to show them any other videos from X channel. And, you know, maybe your best video that person would have really enjoyed. And then they never get to see it because it never gets recommended to them. So that's something that you need to consider, right? If I were to just make a bunch of generic, you know, videos, even like niche videos, that's another thing. A lot of people wonder, why don't you make like this one niche video? This applies to any channel, right? If there's a channel that you like, that, oh, they made this one type of video that you really enjoyed, and whatchamacallit, you're like, I really wish they would make that type of video again. I think a lot of people obviously know that like channels aren't necessarily going to make a video that doesn't perform well. That's like common sense. But I think I can only approach it from my perspective that I've always had. My perspective on that was always, before I was like actually making YouTube videos, is, oh, this person just probably doesn't want to dedicate the energy or time or whatever into making these videos if they're not going to perform too well. Why would you want to, right? And that obviously is part of it. But I think to a certain extent, there's a lot of videos that I can make with relatively low effort, like the WoW forum videos, where I still read the WoW forums regularly. I love it. It's like one of my favorite forms of entertainment. It's so fucking funny reading people just scream at each other about the dumbest shit. I love it to death. And a lot of people really enjoyed watching those videos, but most people didn't. And, you know, sure, it's not too hard for me to make those videos, at least in the style that I did before. It's, whatchamacallit, something that I actually enjoy doing, and I wouldn't mind spending the time making that video. But the problem is, if I uploaded that video and it takes up, you know, recommended space that could be used for like a leveling guide or something that's genuinely useful, well, now that's just wasted space, you know, that could have gone to something actually relevant. I've ranted about this for a while, but I think you get the idea. And the entire reason I went on to that tangent is to say that the nice thing about clips is, or shorts, is it's something completely different that for the most part don't really touch my videos. And I just wanted to experiment with them. And I enjoyed experimenting with it. It did, like I said, significantly better than I expected. I made the first one. First one was what Dragonflight pre-patch rating is like. That was, I remember because it was the first one, right? But I enjoyed making that clip where one of our holy priests forgot to talent whatever the shackle thing is. I don't play priest, so I don't know the name. And then we wiped on Mythic Anduin, and then they realized they didn't talent into it because it was the first day of Dragonflight pre-patch, and they forgot that they actually had to retalent into those spells. It was goofy. Honestly, not my best clip, and I think I've unlisted it at this point, mostly just because, like, you know, it's not novel anymore. At this point, people forgetting talents is fairly common, but that was right after the patch, so it was amusing that happened to us so quickly after the patch landed, literally the first raid. And I thought it was just entertaining the way that the entire thing played out. But then the second one, which is still up on my channel and is actually at this point one of the best performing shorts, not the best one, but one of them, is Resto Druid tries using big words. So our Resto Druid, good friend of mine, love him to death, Milk Supply, he tries to pronounce statistician and absolutely butchers it. And it was just like a really funny moment on Anduin Prague. So I made that. And the thing is, like, I, at the time, didn't really know what to call that clip because, you know, the other one, what Dragonflight pre-patch rating is like a little bit clickbaity and also, like, applies to, you know, the clip. So I was like, oh, yeah, that fits. But I was like, what do I call, like, a goofy clip about a Resto Druid? or about our Resto Druid. And obviously, I'm not going to put his name in the title because nobody knows who he is. So I settled on Resto Druid because it's funny. It's, it says his class. People will joke like, Resto, like there's this Disc Priest in our guild who always memes on Resto Druid players for being brain dead. Like, Resto Druid players only have to press 2 buttons. Haha. So, I figured it would be like a little bit funny, a little bit like of a gag towards our Resto Druid. And I mean, that one did well, but then the thing about our Resto Druid is he kept doing silly stuff, and I kept making shorts about him. So I ended up, like, at least half of my shorts at this point are Resto Druid does X, because he just keeps doing stupid things. But it's great. It's, like, always fun, and now, because the shorts have started to do well, especially the, like, on day 1 of Vault of the Incarnates, my guilds stumbled upon the secret achievement for, what's it called? Primal Council. So, I mean, I say secret. It's not really that secret, but it isn't super communicated. But where is it? The Lunker Below. So I got this literally the day the raid came out, because, I mean, you could watch the clip. I show how it happens. But on the day it came out, one of our raiders saw the fishing pool, was like, I wonder what this is, and then we ended up killing the boss in the first pull with the Lunker active and got the achievement like that, which was just amusing. That was like a very fun way to kickstart Vault of the Incarnates prog. I enjoyed that a lot. Also, I fucked up. I thought I finished interacting with this. Apparently I didn't. But yeah, that short has like 300,000 views now, which is like fucking bananas. I don't know how it has that many. It is, at this point, I shit you not, like my 3rd most viewed video of all time. Like, even compared to actual videos. Fucking wild. Never expected that to perform nearly that well. It's a good clip. I think it is really fucking good. I'm not surprised that people like it. I just didn't expect it to actually get that much attention, I guess. I don't know. Like I said, did not go into shorts expecting that to do well. I think that was only like that might have only been the 3rd short. I'm not entirely sure. I don't think I uploaded too many in between the Resto Druid tries using big words and stuff. But then later on, as they started doing better, and as Milk Supply kept up his goofy antics, and I kept making more of them, I have a lot that are just Resto Druid does X, etc. And now it's like a joke in my guild whenever somebody says, something silly or something, weird happens. Everybody's like, oh, hi, YouTube. And of course, I don't include that in any of them. And a lot of the ones that actually they say hi, YouTube on, I don't even turn into shorts. Because the thing about those clips is it's really tricky. Because while there are a lot of like funny guild in-joke moments that I would love to make into a short, you're really constrained by the 60 seconds. So there are only certain moments that I can actually convey in those 60 seconds, and they also need to be like easily understandable to like an outside viewer of like what's going on and why it's funny. And sometimes if it's like really, really weird or involves like some backstory within our guild, it's kind of hard for that to like genuinely be entertaining. Like, I think a good example of like something really funny that happens in one of our recent raids that I was like, I really wish I could make a short about this, but like it wouldn't have worked, is we were progging Diurna, and this is why I need so much backstory to explain it, which is the reason why it wouldn't work in a short. We were progging Diurna, and somebody from the weekend team, because we have 2 teams, midweek and weekend, somebody from the weekend team who is like the best alchemist in the guild or something. I don't really know all the details. All I know is he's the only one who can guarantee 3-star cauldrons. So he was giving us the 3-star cauldrons, but because of the way it worked, he didn't want to get his lockout ruined because we were on Mythic. So, you actually need to drop the thing. It's like the way cauldrons work, in case you haven't messed around with it. Also, this fucking sucks. This is a really long respawn. There we go. If you haven't messed around with cauldrons for some reason, the way it works, at least in this expansion, is really annoying. It's not even like it gives you a flask or something that like, you can't, or like that you could buy off the auction house, which is how it's always been. Cauldrons are now the only way for non-alchemists to get the best or to get the best potions in most cases, and it's relevant to the story. Some people do not use these potions. So when I say they are the best potions, I mean, for like 90% of specs, your best potion is Ultimate Potion of Elemental Power. And that can only come from the cauldrons if you're not an alchemist. So in order to get our raid their best potions, because every bit of damage matters, unlike Mythic Diurna, we had this Disc Priest come in, and because he was on the weekend team, he had to quickly go in, quickly drop the cauldron, everybody would loot their potions, and then he would go out in the 60 seconds before his lockout got saved. So we needed to make sure that there was a spot in the raid for him to quickly teleport in and drop the cauldron, and B, needed to make sure that everybody was ready to grab the potions. So we were on break, and like break had just been ending, and it was like halfway through the raid night, so everybody's potions had run out or whatever. I don't know exactly. But then the raid leader asked me, he was like, Larice, you don't use Potion of Elemental Power. And that's the way he worded it. He was just like, you don't use Potion of Elemental Power. And I was like, yeah? And he was like, okay, so you use Shocking Disclosure? And I said, yeah. Because like I said before, some specs, and Brewmaster is one of them, don't use Potion of Ultimate Power, whatever the fuck it's called. I use Shocking Disclosure. It's just better for Brewmaster. Don't ask me why. I do as the sim commands, right? And all the Brewmaster experts say, yeah, the sims are correct. You should be using that. I'm like, all right, cool. It honestly works out well for me. They're cheaper. So I get to use cheaper potions because they are apparently better for me, which is nice. But he worded it like really weird. He was like, you don't use that. And he was like, so you use Shocking Disclosure? And I said, yeah. He was like, okay, teleport out. And I was like, wait, what? He was like, yeah, Hearth out. And I'm like, what? I'm sitting there like super confused. And I was like, what do you mean? And then he said, well, we need to get Sockchoy in here to drop the cauldron. So we need an empty raid spot and you don't use it. So Hearth out. And then we'll summon you back. And then I was like, oh, I thought you were kicking me out of the raid. And I was sitting there all confused. And then everybody starts laughing. Like, yeah, you could have worded that a bit better. Like, you know, Larice probably thought you were telling him, like, get the fuck out. How dare you use potions like that? And it was like this whole big confusing mess. And it was entertaining. And like, I thought it was honestly hilarious. It was like the highlight of the raid night for me. But there's so much backstory, and like it was so confusing even to me at the time that like being able to properly convey like all of that in a 60-second clip with all the backstory, it's impossible, right? There is absolutely no way that I can convey that. I don't even know how I would convey that with enough time. I would have to do a lot of setup to make sure that everybody understood what was happening, even though it was hilarious within our raid. So not everything translates correctly like that, but some shorts, you know, like when the Resto Druid says that there are multiple middles inside of a circle, and everybody is just like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's the kind of thing where anybody can listen to a Resto Druid say that and go, what the fuck is this Resto Druid on? Milk Supply is a trip, man. He's great, though. But yeah, so shorts, like I said, I think they're entertaining. Definitely, if you haven't checked them out, I recommend watching them. And I'm not even saying that from a perspective of like, oh yay, I make money off it. The shorts actually quite literally made no money up until like a few days ago. So for the first like 3 months that I was making shorts, I genuinely made, I think, like $3 off all of my shorts combined for the first 3 months because they just didn't have ad revenue enabled. I'm honestly not entirely sure how I even made $3. I don't know why, but it's like I look at one short and it's like, you made 23 cents. Like, awesome. I spent all that time working on the short. It got 300,000 views and I made like $1. Great. But now they finally have like some, I don't know how it works. There's like some weird ad revenue thing. So I can technically finally make money off it. I still don't think it makes a lot, but I guess anything's better than zero, right? So that was another reason. I didn't even think to mention that. Yeah. Like I wasn't even making the shorts because I thought they would be profitable. I was literally just making them because I wanted to. They quite literally made nothing. All of that to say, that was like an hour-long rant. All of that to say, a lot of times, you know, I could be doing these speedruns. I could be doing things that at the end of the day are going to get views. Because even though, like, you know, generic speedruns, like I said, they're not always going to get a ton of views, right? You know, not everybody wants to watch the same route over and over. My Paladin run, with all of its audio issues and all of those problems, still 8,000 views, which, like, by compared to some of my other videos, not amazing. But hey, it's still better than, like, my raid guides, which... On the topic of raid guides, I finally stopped making them, at least for this tier. I finished Heroic, which I'm happy with. But the raid guides performed abysmally, right? And I think they're good. I put a lot of effort into those raid guides. I think they are amazing guides. But at the end of the day, it's a hard market to break into, and they didn't get a lot of views. And those things took infinitely more effort than like any other video I've ever made, except like the leveling guides, the actual polished leveling guides. Yeah, those are like my longest videos in terms of editing. But the raid guides come close, and they perform terribly. It's like such a massive loss if I compare the amount of time I spend editing on it compared to like how much I actually make from those videos. So basically, all I'm trying to say is like lately, I could vomit out like a million different videos, but I've been working a lot on like passion projects, right? On things that I enjoy making, enjoy, uh, turning into videos, and they aren't necessarily going to perform super well. But sometimes, if I want to make a video, I'm gonna make that video. And it's not like some people may view it as like, oh, I'm wasting time making these other things when I could be doing more speedruns. And it's like, no, if I don't want to do a speedrun, I'm not gonna do a fucking speedrun. Like it is just 100% I'm gonna make the content that I want to make, and that's how it is. And like I will say, I guess, like if you want me to do more speedruns, I generally don't like to say this because I don't like to directly ask for like help with this stuff. But like I said, they cost a lot of money. So if you have like a fucking shitload of gold and you're on Area 52 and you want to see more speedruns, hey, send it to Larice, send it to Harlden. I won't say no, but just keep in mind, it's not necessarily going to be the case of like, oh yeah, send me X amount of gold and I'll do another speed run. But a few people have asked that, so I guess I will officially say it. Yes, that would probably help. If I was able to take out the concern of having to fund the consumables and all that stuff, I would actually do more speed runs. And in fact, I don't want to show my hand too much, but the main reason why I am saying this now is because all I will say is I have a super cool idea that is about it's like leveling, and I think the actual speedruns are boring, right? But one of the things that people have asked me about the most is trying out different zones and basically doing speedruns with like alternate zones and stuff like that. And I've thought about it, but it is one of those things where I feel like that would be the kind of thing where that might actually be entertaining to people, but I don't know necessarily if that's something that I would enjoy making videos of. However, I have an idea that I think is really, 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 really fucking cool, and it would involve, as one of the many components, it would involve using alternate zones, basically experimenting with different routing, having like going to different zones that you may never ever see in a speedrun, like raft zones, BC zones, actual kata zones, not like the kata revamp zones. Like I would try to incorporate literally all of the zones in the game into a potential leveling framework. And obviously, it wouldn't necessarily be from a what is the fastest way to level. You already know the fastest way to level. I have a few minor changes that I'll be making in my 10 to 70 run, but for the most part, that isn't changing. There's one fast way, and I found it. Unless you're getting boosted, which, like, if you're getting boosted, who fucking cares, right? You pay somebody to do it for you. And it's only marginally faster. But what's it called? The idea that I have, like I said, don't wanna show my hand too much, but it is, in my humble opinion, really fucking cool. And I've basically like I've told a few of my friends about it, and I've been like, hey, what do you think about this video? Like, does it have potential? Yes, no. And all of my friends were like, that sounds really neat. One of my friends quite literally said, if you pull that off, it could be the greatest WoW video series ever made. And like, I mean, I don't necessarily think he's wrong, because I think that if I do this correctly, if it works out to like the entire way that I think it could work, and I'm able to fully deliver on all of my plans, oh man, I get excited just thinking about this video series. I don't want to hype it up too much, but like when I had this idea, it was like one of those like eureka moments of like, oh my god, that's so fucking cool. How have I not thought of that earlier? So really cool. I will say it's like a challenge run. In case that wasn't already obvious, it's like a challenge run type of format for leveling, where that would make speedruns interesting. Because one of the main problems that I have with speedruns is, like I said, I'm not going to record them if I don't want to. And in addition to the cost, in addition to the time isn't like super important because it's like if I want to do something, I'll set aside the time, right? Like, if it's something I genuinely enjoy, I will find the time. But if I don't enjoy it, it's difficult to motivate myself to do it. And especially if I can't afford all the stuff I need to, then I need to, run a bunch of carries and, get more gold to be able to afford my next speed run, which is a real thing I've had to do a lot. So, that is a concern. But if I manage to do this correctly, this challenge run format that I'm thinking of could actually be extremely fun just to play. And the idea would be, once again, won't go into all the details, but the rule set that I would be using for this challenge run format, which I'd be creating myself, I would want to design it in such a way that like it's a rule set that you could use. Where if you watched my video on it and you were like, "Oh, that's really cool. I want to try that on one of my characters," I would have like all the rules and all the stuff that you could do to basically do it yourself. And I think that would not only be fun for me, but that would make a lot of other people really enjoy leveling. And it would give them like a fun little twist on traditional World of Warcraft leveling. And on one hand, really cool idea. On the other hand, oh my god, it's going to be expensive. there are there's like a lot of ideas that I have for like more just like experimentation with different things, like different items that I would want to see, like because there's a lot of items that wouldn't necessarily fit into like a traditional the 10 to 60 route or even the 60 to 70 route. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of items that I've looked at which are like really niche, really obscure items where I'm like, oh, this item could be really useful in a leveling setting. And then, I test it out. I'm just like, nah, it just like the situations where this item could be really cool just don't come up in like the actual speed run, the actual zones that are used in the speed run. But there's so many cases where it's like I can already think about, oh, in this particular zone there's like this one quest where this would totally be a time save, and there's like so many cool ideas, but I would need to get so many different items and so much different like crafted gear and stuff to test to see like the scaling and whatnot. Basically, there's a lot of experimentation that I want to do, and it's going to be expensive, right? So if you want to help make that easier, Area 52 golds. That's the last time I'll say it, but it is something I will throw out there because I know that some people have mentioned it in the past, and I've always turned it down. I've always been like, nah, 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 I'm fine, because it's like I don't like I said, I don't want somebody to feel like, oh, if I give Haraldin like 100,000 gold, he'll do another speedrun. I don't want it to be like that. In this particular case, kind of. But that is where I will leave it. Also, do I don't really get any. Oh fuck. I forgot about this stupid fucking Lush Hawkenbloom shit. I've also been forgetting to use Battle Standard of Coordination. I remember, what's it called? One of the officers of my guild during his Dragonflight leveling literally macroed this to all of his buttons so that whenever it was off cooldown, he would drop it. And honestly, not the worst idea, because he forgot to turn it off, so I thought it was amusing. Like, we'd be doing Mythic Zero dungeons, like, later in the first week of the expansion, he'd just be dropping these banners, like, constantly. And that's why I even asked and he mentioned that, but I probably should just start doing that, because it would be better for me to be randomly dropping these banners compared to not using them at all, because I just keep forgetting to use them. So, yeah, at this point, it's just a waste. But I think it could be a time save. Oh, God. Finn, every single morning, like, my door is literally closed, but my door doesn't like fully shut properly unless it's locked. So like early on in the morning when my cat wakes up, like I hear like a little thumping at my door, and he like pushes my door open with his head. And I can always tell because you can see it like slowly swing open, and then there's a pause, and then the door like pushes a little bit, and I see his head poke out from around the corner. And he's just like looking to play. At this point, he's just like sitting in the doorway. Hold on, I need to close the door, because the unfortunate thing is I love my cat, but he's problematic. Like, I guess good segue into the other thing that I wanted to talk about. Right, the other thing that is on my mind that I want to rant about, and I've probably got enough time to rant about it before I finish, is so I guess some setup, and then eventually I'll get to how my cat ties into this, and in a small way, but it's why I thought of it. So my mom is moving, and she has my family has lived in I guess I don't want to dox myself, right? I almost said I've mentioned like where I live, so I've said I live in New Jersey before. So family has lived in New Jersey for a while, right? Or my entire life, really. And obviously, I still live here, but my mom is planning on moving because at this point she's retired and she's like, she just wants to go somewhere else. I think like she and her, because my parents are divorced, so my mom and her like new, they're not married, but like new technically like husband. They've been together for I don't know how many years, so they might as well be married at this point. Um, but where is this? That's a world quest. Okay. And I didn't fly with Garethus. Oh, I forgot to click the dragon. Um, does it matter? Kind of matters. Yeah. Yeah, it kind of matters. I'll fucking do it. It's minor time loss, but it's not the end of the world. I'm gonna do the end of before I get into the story. I'll just quickly discuss the end of the routing plans. So obviously Thaldraszus is really inefficient. I discussed this before. The Thaldraszus campaign is horrible. There are some moderately efficient side quest chains in Thaldraszus, and maybe in the future I'll route them in. I'm not gonna rule them out. I won't be doing them in this run. But there's like some individual quest lines in Thaldraszus where I'm like, oh, I could see this being efficient, but I'm not entirely sure where I would put them. Because like this campaign is relatively fast. The only way faster than this really is just mob grinding. That's about it. And like dungeon spamming, I guess I can say it at this point in the video. The analysis that I have coming out, analysis video coming out much later this week, it might even be an entire week from now. I might post it on next Tuesday, is just an analysis on dungeon leveling. How fast is it, etc. The TLDR is that time walking dungeons are relatively efficient if you're queuing as a tank. Regular Dragonflight dungeons are extremely slow, and leveling dungeons are really, 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 really fast from levels 10 to 20. And not necessarily because they are like that much faster. There's some scaling issues, but it's more so the fact that you have slow mount speed, and also mostly for Alliance. I found it might be faster for Horde, but the Horde 10 to 20 route is pretty fast. Silverpine Forest does not require a lot of travel time, but one of the problems that I've had with the routing for specifically Alliance early levels is the zones are a lot more spread out and less like well put together than the Horde zones, which means that without fast movement, it ends up taking a lot of time. So while the times are very comparable, like in a vacuum, and for Horde, they're like roughly equivalent for the first 10 levels, it actually ends up being faster for Alliance from 10 to 20 compared to questing. But after that, dungeon leveling is not efficient. So it's like, I'll do a full analysis. I did a fucking just metric fuckload of testing, and I have like a ton of recorded runs that that's the other thing. Like a lot of people I've mentioned before, because obviously I've done a ton of quote unquote speed runs, right? I leveled 2 Death Knights up to 70 testing this stuff. So 2 entire speed runs that didn't get shown on YouTube, right? And I did a bunch of other like partial leveling runs just to test things. And when I mentioned that before, some people will say like, "Oh, why don't you just upload the footage?" What you have to understand is like a lot of times if I'm casually leveling, I also sometimes just don't want to record it. Like when I'm leveling and I'm not recording it, I am listening to true crime videos for 6 hours straight and just zoning the fuck out as I muscle memory through the quests. That's how I level. I don't level talking to myself normally. This is because it's a video, right? So I'm able to have a more enjoyable experience a lot of times, not doing a speed run. So I only record the speed runs in 2 situations. One, I feel like it. Sometimes I feel like recording my leveling. I feel like ranting about something. I'll make a speed run out of it, or I'll make a speed run video out of it. Or In the case of this, if it's like, if I think I actually have a new strategy change or like important thing to showcase, then of course it's worth making it into a video. But if I turned every single generic run into, an uploaded speedrun video, it would just be miserable every single time. I would run out of things to rant about. There would be a lot of dead, awkward silence. It wouldn't be fun. Just take my word for it. You wouldn't enjoy it. Uh, so yeah, a lot of times I just level and I just kind of like zone out. Like I said, listen to true crime videos. And whatchamacallit? Yeah, I did a bunch of testing for that. But yeah, dungeon leveling, I think the entire point that I was trying to make there, and I'll just, get on with it because, it's there's not much to say about it. Is dungeon leveling is not great for Dragonflight, with the exception of time walking, which is like not fast or not faster, but it's like not bad. Time walking dungeon leveling is definitely not terrible. I don't know why I went into this game. Like I am just an absolute fucking bonobo right now. I need to focus a little bit more to get this shit done. Okay. Anyways, or Euthermos, whatever. Quest complete. So, thing I was saying, story I was telling. Right. So, my mom is moving, and she told me that she had a bunch of boxes that she wanted me to look through. And I didn't realize it, but apparently she has been saving like literally everything from my childhood, like, school reports and all that stuff. I mean, I guess a lot of you, maybe if you're parents, you're probably like, yeah, not surprised. I would do that with my kid or something like that. I guess I just didn't realize how much she saved. Like, I knew she kept some stuff, but like, I am not kidding. Like, it's almost borderline obsessive. Like, she has every single fucking document here. But then, I didn't even realize that. So she was like, oh yeah, I have a few old things, like, my old World of Warcraft trading cards. So she sent me like pictures on Discord, and she was like, oh, would you want this? And it would be like one of my old World of Warcraft calendars from when I was 9. I'm like, oh yeah, sure, I'll take that. Anything World of Warcraft related, like World of Warcraft paraphernalia, like I had a bunch of that as a kid. Definitely want to keep that stuff just because, it's fun to have. I have like a million little like knickknacks that are World of Warcraft related from, various Christmases as a kid. Because I think I mentioned this before, but in case you didn't know, like if you're new to the channel, I've been playing World of Warcraft since I was 5 years old, and I am now 20. How old am I? Hold on. What year is it? 2023. Okay, so I'm 25. Right, got it. Good to know. Or am I? Yeah. Wait, no, I'm 24. Right? Yeah, 24, 25 in a few months. Right, yeah. I think. Yeah. Okay. Um, had to double check. I feel so old having to like double check what age I am. But it's fucking hell. Yeah. So like obviously over the years gathered a bunch of World of Warcraft knickknacks. So my mom sends me those pictures on Discord. She's like, "Hey, like I assume you want to keep this. And you don't want me to throw it out and stuff like that." So then she was like, "Okay, like next time we get lunch or something, I'll bring over all the stuff." So we go out for lunch and my mom brings over, I shit you not, like a fucking mountain of boxes. Like on Discord, she sends a few pictures, like, oh yeah, some old World of Warcraft stuff. Just fucking mountain of boxes. Like if I count, I still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 boxes. And there's like about 6 that I've sorted through already that are like not in my room anymore and like are somewhere else, like threw them out, whatever. There were just so many of them. And this is like the first trip was like 6 boxes or something like that. And then I remember at the time I was like, what the fuck? How much stuff is there? And then she was like, oh yeah, well this is most of it. Then the next time, she's like, oh, I found more boxes. And there's like 6 more fucking boxes there. To the point where like my entire room is just filled to the brim with boxes. And it genuinely was hard to walk around for a while because it's taking up so much space. I don't have enough closet space for all these boxes. And I didn't realize she was bringing it over. But like, at the same time, when she was like, oh, it's a lot of your old school stuff, I don't necessarily want to throw it out because I don't know what's in there. And I've had to sort through pretty much every single one of my school assignments from grade 1 to actually kindergarten. I think she still has grade 1 to like grade 12. College stuff, obviously she doesn't have because like, any actual assignments or whatever from college at that point, like I fucking threw out. I've already talked at length in previous things about like my experience both when I was in college and still making videos years ago, and by the end of college and stuff. Which, hey, at least I graduated, right? I did that much, but I was not the best college student, let's just say. Could have been worse, but and I mean more from like a caring perspective. Like I wasn't a nuisance. I wasn't disrupting my teachers. In fact, I would like to think that most of my professors at least like socially liked me because I'm not an asshole. Like I was nice, and at least if I couldn't do the assignment, or honestly if I didn't want to do the assignment, like I was at least nice about it. Um, but like for the classes I actually cared about, I'd like to think that I got along with my professors. I've said before, at least I said before on like speed runs around the time when I was graduating, my thesis professor especially, who like he messaged me a few months ago, just like seeing how I was doing. Really nice guy, and he let me use my YouTube channel as my thesis project, which in the end, effectively, he let me completely skip the thesis class, and he gave me an A for it. Which, like, what a fucking guy! Because I remember explaining to him, and really nice guy, really understanding, and like he thought the whole like YouTube stuff was cool. So I remember explaining this to him and explaining to him like all the work that I was doing for it, and I kind of told him like I don't have enough time to do a thesis project and run my YouTube channel. Like this requires an insane amount of work. And he just kind of let me just not do a thesis project. Or, well, he let me say that my thesis project was my YouTube channel. And I gave like a few presentations in class, but like I never did a full final thesis presentation. I put together like a PowerPoint and stuff, which I mean, I think it was a good PowerPoint. But it was nowhere near like the actual written requirements for what the thesis project had to be. But like, he was a nice guy. He was also happened to be my academic advisor, and I had like a lot of like mandatory like academic advisor meetings with him where I talked to him about like what making YouTube videos entails and all the work. And the funny thing about it is he actually understood better than most because he actually has his own YouTube channel, which he does like for fun because he runs some organization about like they do like this big meeting thing about I forgot what it was called. I wish I remembered, but it was like something about like where you share ideas, and he gets like people from like Walt Disney and all these like really big companies to go in there, and they like talk about like their ideas or plans for like a project, and it's basically like this whole like brainstorming convention kind of thing. Neat little concept, and he has like videos about it. He's done interviews with like a lot of really famous people in like game design and stuff like that. So he has all those videos up there. His uh his most viewed video has like millions of views, and it's uh basically a bunch of Tickle Me Elmos turned on at the same time, and they just go like absolutely ape shit. And that is his most viewed video, just a bunch of Tickle Me Elmos turned on at the exact same time. Which, but like honestly, really cool guy, really understanding, and made my life a lot easier by like not forcing me to do all this extra work. So basically, all I needed to do was like talk to him about how my YouTube channel was going, give him updates, explain what I was doing with like different videos and like my strategy for uploads and stuff like that. And he would like give me advice and stuff like that. And that was my thesis project. Super, super awesome. Made my life a lot easier, but definitely meant that I was not doing a lot of college related work. And I mean, you could argue, like, I know a lot of people will say, quite frankly, this is what my dad said, that by not doing a thesis project, I was only hurting myself because, I could be designing something much cooler and spending that time, whatever, whatever. But I mean, I think it's a cop out, right? Because, like, at the end of the day, I think it's better to be doing work towards something that I'm invested in. And, I'm still actually learning useful skills by doing YouTube, right? It may not necessarily be something that could very easily translate into a job. Not to say it can't, though. But it's not as easy as like, oh, you learned how to program or whatever. You get like a programming job, etc. So that kind of thing where like, yeah, it doesn't necessarily translate as well as like, my dad would like, but it's still useful, and it's still something that I can actually do, and something that quite frankly, I'm passionate for. And that was like a main issue that I ran into for years in college, is I just didn't care about what I was doing. And it's like, now I found something that I'm actually passionate about. And I think that's the main reason why my professor let me do that, because like, when he would talk to me about it, like he could tell that it was something I was genuinely passionate about. And like there was a lot of insight that, I had that he didn't even realize. I gave him some tips for his own channel, which like despite the fact that his own channel he's been making videos for years, because he only makes videos for fun, there were some things in terms of like the marketing side of things where I'm like, oh, you could do this so much better. Like you could improve this, and that. And I think even he was like, yeah, I don't want to go to all that effort, right? To him, he uses his channel more as like an archive of like, he runs his own little thing. He uploads the videos there just for the memories and just like as like a way of, if he wants to reference it later on, he can. And he has like 1,000 videos or something that he's uploaded over like 10 years or something crazy. So just really fun to talk to him, and I think that's the reason why he was like lax on me with that. At least I'm guessing. I don't know. It's not like he ever directly said that to me, but that was how I interpreted it. Uh, but yeah. Point being, that was another little tangent. I can hand this in. I forgot to. Where do I? Is there a Hearthstone person here? I don't know where the innkeeper is in this area. Here, before I forget, because if I go do this quest now, it's going to end up wasting a bit of time. So I'm just going to take a little short detour this way. I'm going to set my Hearthstone because I forgot to do that earlier. So minor time loss, but I set my Hearthstone over here, turn in Wanted Marinar the Thunderous, and in the end, even though it was a minor time loss because I forgot, taking this detour now will be a minor time save in the end, compared to if I just said fuck it and then didn't do it at all. What else? Think yeah, at this point I just continue along with the campaign. But yeah, point being, college is something like I said I've talked about a lot. But I don't think I talked a lot about like my early school years, and it's something where like it's not something I think on actively, but at this point like I've been sifting through all of these old uh papers and assignments, and it's a weird experience looking through all this stuff, looking through like homework assignments that like were from years and years ago. And there's this almost strange sense of it's like nostalgia, but it's almost not. Like because there are things that I never really thought of, but there's also things that like I vaguely remember. Like I'm sure a lot of people have like fragmented memories of like their childhood or like one particular thing that stuck with them. Like two examples that I remember is one thing that works for me is I learned really well by doing like flashcards. And actually, oh, here's a funny story. Another little tangent, but I promise you it's funny. So I can't believe I haven't told this story before. But on the topic of making flashcards and quizzes and stuff, I always learned well by doing stuff like that, by making my own tests and quizzing myself. Like I would think of what are all the important things I need to know for this test, and I would like go into like Quizlet or whatever, make like my own little test, write all my own questions, and then take my test over and over until I had everything like memorized. Right? That's like how I would learn a lot of times, like studying for tests. We're talking like fifth, sixth grade and stuff like that. And I did this for years. And this is one of those things where I think a lot of that was like, that was a habit that my mom kind of instilled into me. She said this is something that she always did as a kid. And that's how she always learned. These days, I don't do that quite well. Kind of. These days, at least for school, right? When I was in college, I didn't do that quite as much. I just kind of read it a few times and tried to memorize it. And usually that was good enough. But in terms of making like the quizzes and the flashcards and whatnot, that was something that it was largely my mom's idea when I was a kid, and I did that for years and years and years and years and years. I probably started doing that back in like second or third grade, probably third grade, and like one of the fragmented memories that I was talking about earlier for me is there was a set of flashcards, one of the first sets of flashcards I ever wrote when my mom was trying to like teach me to do this as like a very young kid. And she was like, "Oh, trust me, like it'll help you memorize it." And when I realized that it does help me, I was trying to remember like vocab terms for third grade. And the it was like for science, and there were like my mom said, why don't you try like turning the definitions into a song, because I kept having trouble memorizing. She was like, make your own little song and that'll help you remember the terms. And I was like, nah, I don't know. So then to kind of like mock what my mom was saying as a little kid, I, for the term metamorphosis, I said the process in which an animal changes form in different stages of its life cycle, and that was my song for it. In case you haven't noticed, I remember it word for word, uh, like 20 years later. So the funny thing about me mocking my mom by doing that is it actually worked so well, it seared itself into my memory, and I remember after I've graduated college. And because the funny thing is, I remember bringing that up to my mom, like weeks later, I still couldn't forget metamorphosis, the process in which an animal changes form in different stages of its life cycle. I had that stuck in my head because I turned it into a song. And for years, I kept bringing it up to my mom. I can't forget metamorphosis. I keep thinking. And there was like other ones, other terms, like one of them was the second stage of the incomplete metamorphosis, but doesn't really have any wings. And I forget the word for that, but I remember that definition from third grade. And one of the boxes that my mom brought over, like while we were at lunch, like we were sitting in the car after, like looking through the box, and my mom found a vocab sheet from third grade that had the process in which an animal changes form in different stages of its life cycle. So like I kept that because that is just so deeply seared into my memory, despite being in third grade. And there's like another one that I recently found that I don't think I ever mentioned to my mom or something, but like a similar situation for me is I remember random shit like fifth grade math. And in fifth grade, we had these like little practice worksheets where they were always so goofy, right? It would be like one of those little scenarios. Like I remember looking at one of them the other day, and it was like, people at the math factory have mixed up the numbers. Help them get their quotients right. Like the fucking math factory, what the fuck? It's just these random like scenarios that you have to like solve problems for. And I remember even as a kid, I thought shit like that was really dumb. And one of the assignments was fifth grade math, and it was like, Mr. Blockhead runs a toy factory, and he's been tasked by his like manager or something to sort out the different toys in terms of their shapes. Can you help Mr. Blockhead define what the different shapes are? And then it was like, his boss told him something about a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. But Mr. Blockhead doesn't understand what that means. Can you explain it to him? And it was all about like understanding the different properties of shapes, like what are the core properties of like a square, and it's like all four sides are equal or something like that. But I remember we were supposed to then write on the back the exact meaning of what is a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square mean. And my teacher did a really shit job at explaining it. So I distinctly remember sitting there in class looking at this fucking Mr. Blockhead worksheet and thinking to myself, how the fuck am I supposed to explain this? I have no fucking idea what a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square means. And then, like, I finally got it, and it was like one of those, like, as a kid, eureka moments of, like, oh, I get it. A rectangle has all of the properties, or a square has all the properties of a rectangle, but a rectangle, all the sides aren't equal. So, like, technically speaking, you could squish a rectangle and make it a square, but like, by definition, I don't remember how my little kid brain reasoned it out, but like I understood it. And it was like one of those moments of just like, I don't know, like brain blast, right? Like, oh my God, I understand now. I can see the matrix. Like, and that like stuck with me. And ever since the phrase, a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square, has been like etched into my being. And I've actually used that, just randomly. I'm sure if you went back through all of my old speedruns, you'd probably find an instance where I just like randomly say, yeah, well, a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. I just use that sometimes. And it's all because of that, like, Mr. fucking Blockhead worksheet from fifth grade. And then I was looking through my assignments and I found the Mr. Blockhead worksheet buried in a folder. So, of course, I saved that. But there's, like, little memories like that of, like, I remember this one in-class assignment from fifth grade. So, of course, I need to go through every single fucking folder because what if there's something like that? where it's like, oh yeah, there was that assignment, and you know, you gotta save that, right? It's at this point that's a part of me. You know, that's like part of my defining character traits of a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. Got to keep that. But point being, I've been sifting through all of these different, like you know, folders and whatever that I have, and it's it's interesting, especially like you know, kind of reliving um, parts of my childhood that I don't necessarily remember, like seeing all this stuff, and it honestly, like in many ways, seeing it from a new perspective because uh, I think like one of the main issues that I had with schooling, right, is I guess to go all the way back to the beginning. I really don't remember anything about kindergarten. I don't even remember where my kindergarten was or who my kindergarten teacher was. I think I vaguely remember the building. And like I think if my mom's like, oh, like if we drive past it, like, oh yeah, that's where your kindergarten was. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. But it's like I have no concrete memories from that point. Like that's all like just fragmented bits and pieces. But like first grade is the only time where I have like actual memories. Unfortunately, a lot of them are not related to school and they're a little bit too heavy to discuss on here. Uh, but some of the memories that I do have from school vaguely is um, when I was in first grade, for whatever reason, I really, in hindsight, seems like a really bad idea for something that they should do. Sansa trophy from our first hunts, right? For whatever reason, my first grade class had like a mock election where the little kids, little first graders, had to vote for either George Bush or John Kerry. I don't know why they made first graders do that, like maybe to teach them the importance of politics or whatever. I don't fucking know. But the problem was, and I don't remember all the details. I vaguely remembered that I did this. And my mom has told me the stories, especially about her getting calls from the school about it. My mom is like a very big Democrat, right? And she was like always telling first grade me about like, you know, oh, George W. Bush this, George W. Bush that, war in Iraq this, war in Iraq that. And, you know, saying that, oh yeah, John Kerry's good or whatever. And like I'm not even like trying to echo that, right? Like I really don't know much about John Kerry. This was so long ago. I don't even know what John Kerry looks like, honestly. I fucking forget, right? But apparently when I was a little kid, because my mom told me, oh yeah, George Bush is this awful evil man and John Kerry is awesome, I basically, as a first grader, went around campaigning to my class trying to tell them that they needed to vote for John Kerry in our mock election because George Bush kills people and George Bush is bad. And the school had to call my mom and be like, hello, your son is telling people that George Bush kills people and that they can't vote for him, and it's scaring a lot of the kids. And I found like some of those letters that my teacher at the time wrote to my mom about like, you know, I'm really concerned about Mark, you know, XYZ, you know, he's a nice kid, but then XYZ thing, a lot of it was playing with my pencils and stuff like that because you know, I've mentioned this before, but I have ADD, which means I get distracted easily. I mean, now it's all called ADHD. Like I've said this before, when I got diagnosed, it was just ADD. Now it's all ADHD. Like the whole hyperactive element of it, like a lot of them are like, oh, it's one of the same, right? I guess you could technically argue that in certain situations, I fall into the ADHD category, namely being able to talk for like 3 hours straight or longer with no prompt, right? That is a little bit ADHD, probably, but you would never know that if you actually met me because in real life, in person, etc., I am extremely quiet and very shy. Generally speaking, I would say over the years I've gotten better at that. Like as a little kid, I like never talked. I was really, really shy. Except like I guess when I was really, really little, I wasn't. Like when I was campaigning for John Kerry. But then like second grade, third grade onwards, that's when by the time I was in fourth grade, I was like really shy all the time. And like I had friends, like I was decently good at like making friends. Like I can hold a one-on-one conversation with like somebody I'm comfortable with like pretty well. But especially like going like being extroverted and going out and like approaching people and stuff like that. absolutely abysmal at it. So was very shy like as a little kid. And then honestly, World of Warcraft, if anything, really helped me kind of break out of my shell and be more social and stuff. And now I can even within a group like decently hold a conversation, but especially like in person with people I don't know super well. Like in college, right? If people tried to like talk to me in college, like I was polite. I wouldn't like tell people to fuck off or ignore them or something like that. But generally speaking, I'm fairly terse in person. If you try to talk to me and I don't know you, very like why are you approaching me, kind of thing. Uh, like I remember there was one case in college. I'm getting off topic again, I know. But one case in college where I was playing Wizard of Legends on my computer in the middle of class, which like I mean I literally just played shit in class. Most of the time it was World of Warcraft, but for whatever reason, I think that was like right after I first got Wizard of Legend, and I really enjoyed it. And I was playing it in class, and then some kid like walked behind me, and he like whispered to you, was like, "Oh, it's a really cool game," and then like asking me something about it. And like I was nice, and I answered, but I did kind of make it clear that I really didn't want to talk. It was like I wasn't like rude to the kid, but I definitely like didn't really like continue the conversation. It was very much like he asked me questions, I gave like polite answers, and it was like a fine enough, not awkward conversation, but definitely not like I'm super outgoing and chatty type of conversation. No, it was like very much please go away. I am uncomfortable now. That type of thing. Anyways, yeah. Point being, right? Especially as a kid, ADHD was really bad. So I found a lot of letters, which obviously as a kid I never read, but a lot of letters from my first grade teacher, Mrs. Brown, to my mom, saying like, "Oh, today Mark was playing with his pencils," and there was one where I was like, "Oh no, poor like 6-year-old Mark." I didn't get to pick from what was like the good students bag or something like that at the end of the day, and it was like because he wasn't following instructions, he didn't get to pick a prize out of like the the good students bag or whatever. And like I'm not writing this letter to get him in trouble, but I was worried that he would be upset, so I wanted to make sure that you knew or something like that. I like obviously I don't remember Mrs. Brown too much, but I'm sure she was a sweet lady. I don't remember anything bad about her, whereas like my second grade teacher, who I'm not going to name, was a nightmare. And well, I vaguely remember my first grade teacher, Mrs. Brown, being like understanding and trying to help me with that. Because like I think, she's like, oh, it's a little kid. The little kid has trouble paying attention. I'm gonna, be a good teacher and a good role model and try to like encourage him and help him. And I don't remember all the details, but I'm sure she did that pretty well because I have vaguely good memories of my time in school uh, as a first grader. And second grade was extremely miserable for me. I distinctly remember as a kid, and I remember my parents really, really were not happy too with the teacher. Because second grade, I remember I still had a lot of the same issues, and I remember kind of what it was like having to deal with the teachers being frustrated or the teacher being frustrated with me. Because sometimes it was weird. Like I can't fully explain it. My ADD was way worse. I just would be unable to focus, and everybody would be like working on an assignment or workbook, and I just wouldn't be doing the assignment. The one time that I vaguely remember, because I really did think it was interesting, is we were supposed to be working on a math assignment, and I was looking up at the ceiling, and it was like one of those ceilings where I don't know how to describe like the texture of the material, but there's like this little like it's kind of like rough, like crackly material that was like what the ceiling was made of, and like in our classroom, whatever. And for whatever reason, there was like this gigantic paper clip. It was like a triangular paper clip, and it was stuck in one of the panels on the ceiling. And I remember just like while we were starting our assignment, I looked up at the ceiling, and I remember thinking as a little kid, like, why is there a paper clip there? And I remember like I have this vague faint memory. It's like all in bits and pieces of just staring at the paperclip. And that's all I remember. But evidently, and this is what my mom fills in, evidently the teacher walks up to me and gets mad at me for not doing my assignment. It's like, Mark, get your work done. And I said, Mrs. So-and-so, did you know that there's a paperclip stuck in the ceiling? And apparently she got really pissed off at that comment for whatever reason, because apparently she took it as like disregard for, the fact that I was supposed to be working or something like that. Mind you, I'm a second grade kid, and I can tell you, my only memory is fascination of this paperclip. Like I wasn't trying to slight her or anything. I still remember that paperclip. I don't know what it was doing up there. So I like second grade me was truly just like, what the fuck is that paperclip doing on the ceiling? But the teacher took it extremely seriously, got like pissed off, said I wasn't taking class seriously, and I remember my mom was really frustrated because she was really upset because she was like, obviously teachers should be doing more to actually try and support the kids instead of getting mad at a second grade kid for, not being able to focus, right? And like one thing, another memory that I have is like apparently there was I vaguely remember this one. Apparently there was like a bookcase that she had that was like super old, and it had like this little, it was like peeling apart or something. And apparently like I picked at like the peeling apart section of the bookcase, and uh like the teacher freaked out and called my parents and said that I was like damaging property or something like that. And that one, whenever I bring up this teacher to my dad, he's still like, oh yeah, no, that fucking bitch, I can't believe that. Like he evidently, when he got the call about like me quote unquote destroying property because I like aimlessly lightly picked at a bookcase that was literally falling apart, he was pissed because at the time, from what my dad said, it was like, you know, I wasn't focused, I wasn't paying attention because I had ADD. And instead of understanding that in any way, my teacher was literally looking for ways to effectively get me in trouble and basically complain about me to the principal of like, oh, this student is, impossible to deal with or whatever. And I'm going to be honest, it made my second grade hell. I distinctly remember absolutely hating second grade because of that teacher, because she just made life a living hell for me. And there was also like, I think second grade, it didn't help. That was probably the single grade. Oh, my Darkman Fair buff fell off. Let me make sure I refresh this. Second grade was the single point in my entire school career where I was bullied. And I guess that's a good thing, but it also makes second grade doubly worse. And I think that's one of the problems, right? Um, I think what teachers don't realize when they do stuff like that and they openly like target one particular kid and call them out is they are effectively putting a target on that kid's back. Because I was constantly called out by the teacher. The teacher was constantly like effectively ridiculing me in front of the rest of the class about how I couldn't get my assignments done. I couldn't do X, I couldn't do Y. So teacher very clearly made me the other in that situation. And little kids are going to jump on that. So there was two kids later on who the bullying didn't continue. I remember they weren't in my class in third grade. They would make like snide comments at me in the hall, but by that point it was like I ignored them, right? And it was whatever. I have all my buffs, right? And then it didn't continue on, and I was never really bullied like seriously after that. In fact, I've kind of joked that like I'm kind of like the complete opposite case for bullying, because like later on in whatchamacallit, in like Spanish and in Spanish class, I remember one of like the big high school jocks and stuff was actually really nice, and I remember he really liked me because he was like really struggling with Spanish, and I would like whenever like he would have trouble with an assignment, he would bring it to me and I would help him with his homework. But like I didn't do his homework for him. Like he would bring it to me. He's like, I don't understand this thing, and I would like try to help him with it. And I remember he was always really nice to me. There was one point, I know we're skipping ahead to ninth grade, but one point in ninth grade where somebody did make fun of me for something where, oh yeah, it was in Spanish class. Because I sit cross-legged, right? Like, I don't like sitting like normally in a chair. I like keeping my legs crossed. I have my legs crossed right now. And I was sitting cross-legged in Spanish class because it's just more comfortable for me. And like, some of the kids started like joking, like, oh, he's sitting cross-legged. Oh, isn't that different? Ooh, that's not what we're doing. So then this like football jock who I helped with classwork then sat cross-legged himself and basically was like, who cares? Yeah, I'll do it too. And like basically like standing in solidarity with me, like, oh, if they're gonna make fun of him for sitting cross-legged, I'll do it too. So
I'd like to think I looked out there, especially like later on in high school. You know, the traditional like stereotypical like football jocks were always like really nice, and then I've mentioned before that a lot of the football players in my grade, they actually played Hearthstone, and because I was the only person in my high school who actually hit legend rank, so at lunchtime, whenever whatchamacallit, like we would always play Hearthstone, and whenever they would run into trouble with like one of their like ranked games, they would go over to my lunch table and bring their phone. They're like, "What should I do here?" So I gave like basically Hearthstone coaching to the football players in my school, which was really fun, honestly. Like I've talked about that before, but one of my best memories of high school is like I had four phones laid out in front of me playing four Hearthstone games at the same time. And it was fucking wild. That's a good memory. But anyways, back to not so good memories. In second grade, yeah, because my teacher constantly like effectively picked on me for no reason, it got me, bullied by other kids as well. Specifically, there were two kids. One of them I remember his name distinctly because he was like the instigator, like the ringleader, so to speak. And I remember really hating him. I never, it's kind of funny. I never really forgave him for that. It was like there were a lot of other kids. Like there were a few kids who, especially like early on, were like not necessarily super nice to me, but later on were like pretty friendly and chill, and like I got along with them. Some of them were like the aforementioned like high school football players who in later years I got along with really well. That was one kid who he wasn't even like later on a football player, just like a generic kid, right? And I don't think I ever quite forgave him. I never really spoke to him later on. But yeah, he was like really fucking mean to me in second grade. Genuinely the only instance of like serious bullying I've ever had to deal with. And as a result, second grade was absolute hell for me. It's like a double whammy of my teacher and those kids. So second grade, I honestly barely even looked through. I skimmed through some of them and I just like threw out pretty much everything from there because that's like a grade that I don't really need memories of. And then third grade was like kind of whatever. I actually have very few memories of third grade because it was like so uneventful, I guess. Uh, and then fourth grade was like when I first started trying. So I think in case it wasn't obvious, by the stuff I've said about like, first and second grade and like letters home, I didn't do well in school at all. I mean, we didn't really have like letter grades at the time. I think it was like more like outstanding or satisfactory or unsatisfactory when you're like a little kid or something. And I got like straight unsatisfactories. First grade, I did okay. I actually found some of my first grade report cards, and it was like some of them were like needs improvement. But most of them were like some of them were outstanding. I got an O, like woo. And then others were needs improvement. I don't think I had any like unsatisfactories in first grade. So Mrs. Brown, good teacher. But then second grade, it was like unsatisfactory across the board. And I mean that's the thing. You only have one teacher, at least in my schools. We only had one teacher at that grade, all the way up until fifth grade was the first time we actually had two separate teachers, and then they would split it 50-50. It was history and English, it was one teacher, and then math and science was the other teacher. But here, this poll is actually quite hard, so I'm going to focus slightly. So feasting worm, and then grip that one in because it's really far away. I probably should have saved my cooldowns. I'm going to Bloodlust here. Guardian Druid War Stomp. And then I think I can just spam Raise because I don't have the thing from where it's like Mangle reduces the cooldown, so just gotta make sure I don't die. Frenzied Regen really carrying here. And nice. Alright, that's good. Now I just need to interact with these runes. Did I do it again? Oh no, okay, I actually did it correct. I've so many times I get up to this section and then I forget to actually hand in the quest before I pull the 6 worms. And I just had that moment of, did I fucking do that again? But no, I actually remember this time. Good on me. What else? Yeah, third grade relatively uneventful. And I saw some of my report cards from third grade. We actually finally started getting lettered grades. And I was getting like some A's, but mostly B's. And I think like I was trying harder in third grade, but it's hard to remember what exactly happens going into fourth grade. I remember a distinct mental shift. Like I can't quite explain it, but I know that third grade I did not take very seriously because like after second grade I was just like so done with school. and like my mom kind of forced me to try, but I didn't care at all. So like I still got B's and whatever. But then something changed in fourth grade, and I don't remember what it was. I genuinely can't pinpoint it. But I distinctly remember being much more serious about school and wanting to actually, perform well and caring a lot about like, whether or not I got good grades. And I was really proud of it. I had straight A's all the way from my first quarter of fourth grade to my second quarter of 10th grade. And after 10th grade, I started getting D's, which a large drop off from getting straight A's every single quarter. At that point, at a certain point after like sixth grade, it became like a point of pride to me of like, I can only get straight A's. And that was I guess as a kid, that's like my defining characteristic. Once you start getting straight A's, and you're getting rewarded by your parents, are like, wow, you did a great job, good job, keep getting straight A's. Like it's almost like my identity starting from fourth grade onwards became the kid who gets straight A's. And I always felt this like pressure of like, I need to get, a perfect score in this assignment, because if I don't, my mom's going to be disappointed in me or something, or I'm going to be like grounded if I get a B on a test, which is something that I'm not even exaggerating. I have kind of given my mom some shit about that before, of her standards for me, especially as a kid, were a little bit unreasonably high. Um, and especially, I think it started once I started doing well in fourth grade. I think, my mom was always the type of person where she always wanted me to do well. And I think that was why she was frustrated back in like first and second grade when I wasn't. And I remember she's told me before that she was really worried back in first grade when I wasn't doing well, because she was like, oh no, is this going to be like a consistent thing? Am I going to have the trouble child? And I mean, kind of, but uh, eventually in fourth grade, I started actually getting like straight A's, A pluses and everything. And it was like, I basically was instilled in me that you need to keep doing this. You need to keep getting straight A pluses. And literally, like if I got a B on a test, I would get grounded for like a day or something. Wouldn't be able to play World of Warcraft. And it was like this thing where whenever there was a test, I literally couldn't play WoW. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't have fun. I had to study. I had to get like a perfect score. I had to try to get a 100. And if I didn't get a 100, it was like disappointing. But hey, at least you didn't get a B, right? As long as you get an A, it's fine. And that was like the mentality driven into, I would say, primarily by my mom. My dad obviously wanted me to do well, but I think my dad was much more of like I just want you to like be learning and doing well. Whereas my mom was very like authoritarian about like, you need to get perfect scores. And I think my dad in some cases felt like, I've never actually directly talked to him about this, but I feel like he felt compelled to kind of, because they were divorced by that point. And I think he kind of felt compelled to like keep punishments kind of the same at his house, because he, that's kind of a thing, if you're divorced, you don't want to like have that one parent be like the good parent and the bad parent. It's like bad for the kid, right? So you need to kind of like somewhat stand in solidarity with your your ex spouse, even if you don't necessarily agree with them on a lot of stuff. And that lasted for a while until I stopped doing well in school at all, and my parents both took very different approaches. I don't know if we'll get there here. We're actually already almost level 70. Whatever I don't finish talking about here, I'll probably continue ranting about whenever I do the 60 to 70 run or 10 to 70 run, because I'm probably going to do that like within the same 24-hour span as this one, even if it doesn't get uploaded super fast. But yeah, fourth grade, I remember feeling that like tremendous pressure to do well. And I don't know, it is weird, like seeing like I remember there was one thing in particular that stood out to me. It was like I kept it aside because I figured if anything, in hindsight, my mom would probably get a kick out of it. But I had to write like a story about my hero, and I chose my mom, and I talked about like, oh, my mom does all these things, and my mom's so fun, and like I love my mom, right? But there was definitely a period of time where we did not get along later on. And I think especially like as a very little kid, talking about like, oh, it was especially like a little bit, I'm not sure how to feel about it, seeing all these things. Like I remember writing in there, like one of the lines that really stood out to me is I wrote like a lot of the A's on my report card are largely to do with my mom because she, pushes me to try harder and is always like teaching or telling me to learn new things and try my best or something like that. And like the way that fourth grade me wrote it sounds really like, oh, my mom's really supportive. And it's like at the time, I'm sure that's probably how I viewed it. But the problem with that is it's like, it's one thing to be like really supportive of your kid. And I don't think my mom's ever going to watch this. And if you are, not mad at you. I've had conversations with her about this. But it's like it's one thing to be supportive of your kid and to push them to do their best. But at a certain point, if they don't meet your expectations, then how you handle that, I really think says a lot. And later on, like in hindsight, looking at this, oh, my mom is like, always pushing me to do better. Later on, seeing how, with the knowledge of how my mom would handle it when I wasn't meeting her expectations, was made that like letter a little bit bittersweet because like, it's kind of weird, right? Where I have this kind of gap in my childhood, pretty much from like grades around 4 through 9, where a lot of the stuff that happened in like World of Warcraft and other games around that period of time, I didn't really get to play. I mean, obviously, I've always loved video games, right? And even as a kid, I loved playing video games. And like as a very, very little kid, I remember always, loving World of Warcraft, and I always wanted to work for Blizzard. Gee, how did that turn out? But especially when I started getting to the point where I felt the pressure to do really well in school, I remember distinctly as a kid feeling really disappointed because a lot of my friends would be playing World of Warcraft and they would be doing all these fun things. And there was like, for instance, Wrath of the Lich King, so many things I wanted to do in Wrath of the Lich King that I never got to do, which, you know, is one of the reasons why I really like Classic. It's like a little mini tangent because I've kind of explained this to people before, more like my friends. I don't know if it's something I've really talked about um, on my channel. But like one of the things I like about Classic, and one of the reasons why I desperately hope they do Cata Classic, and why like I really get pissed when people like actively say, "Oh, Cata Classic would suck. Please don't do Cata Classic." Like if you're rooting against Cata Classic, honestly, fuck you, because you already have Wrath Classic. You already have the thing you want. I really want Cata Classic. Like I am genuinely excited for it because for me, that period of time in between, it was pretty much like in between Wrath of the Lich King and the beginning of Mists of Pandaria. Like I was finally able to play World of Warcraft actually in the middle of Mists of Pandaria because that's when 10th grade happened and I stopped giving a shit about school. Which is a story for a different time. I've already kind of hinted at it, right? But up until that point, I still played World of Warcraft, but it was almost like the worst experience ever because I got to play World of Warcraft and I enjoyed it, but I got to see all of these really fun things going on in the game that I couldn't do because I did not have time to do it. And I had friends in my school who I played World of Warcraft with. I distinctly remember my friend Robbie. He joined a guild in Firelands, and he every single day in school. I think was that fifth or sixth grade? I think it was fifth grade. Yeah, every single day in like fifth or sixth grade, he would tell me all these stories about like his raiding team and how his guild was doing in Firelands. And I had always wanted to join a guild. Raiding was like this mystical thing that I always really wanted to do, but I never got a chance to do. Which is one of the reasons why I love raiding now, because when I finally got a chance to try it, I like dove in head first and really ended up enjoying it as I thought I would. And I still love raiding to this day. But as a little kid, I always wanted to do that, and I never got a chance. And a large part of that was my mom. Well, honestly, my parents in general, not being able to do that stuff. So it's, for me, I guess on the note of Classic, for me, Classic is quite literally a way to, it's not even like nostalgia in some sense, because it's like, I am getting nostalgia of like, oh, I remember playing this. But I remember distinctly feeling extreme disappointment at not being able to do like all of these raids, especially like Firelands is a big one that sticks out to me because I remember all the stories in fifth grade that my friend Robbie would tell me and being like, I wish I could do that. and not being able to do it. So it's like there's a certain sense of like Cataclysm almost just like completes the missing, or Classic almost completes the missing gaps in my childhood, because all those things that I was never able to do because I didn't have time, I can finally go back and do now. And it's like it is actually one of the most satisfying feelings ever, getting to play through Classic and experience all the content. Like I like Classic. I enjoy that type of gameplay. I don't hate don't love it more than retail. Obviously, if I loved Classic a ton, I'd only be playing Classic, but I enjoy it. It's not like I'm only playing it for like the memories. But for me, it really is, I would call myself a sightseer. And I think that is a big part of Classic. And for me, that is a huge part of it to me. And it isn't just something that I enjoy. It fundamentally like I don't know how to describe it, like soothes a part of my soul playing through Classic content and getting to like put all of these old like missed out on feelings to rest. And now like I don't feel bad about missing out on that because I finally get to go back and experience it as if I was doing it, when I was a kid. And it is like a feeling so intensely satisfying that I can't describe. And I don't want to miss out on that for Cataclysm Classic, because Cataclysm Classic, I remember distinctly feeling I really, really, really wanted to actually play the game, and I still just did not have time. And that one is, like I said, the Firelands thing. I especially wanted to raid with my friends, and I just could not do it. And I would love nothing more than to go back and relive Cataclysm and just get to do all the things I never got to do, just like I've done with all the other expansions. And I know everybody will say, oh, but Cataclysm sucks. Cataclysm this, Cataclysm that. I don't care. I just want to fucking play it. I just want to go back and see the content that I missed. I want to raid Firelands, like actually raid Firelands, not like fucking time walking shit. It's like, I don't know. It really genuinely means a lot to me. I really, 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 really hope that, the classic Andes who are like, fuck Cataclysm, don't bring it back. I really hope that Blizzard just ignores them, because like, fuck that. You already have your game. Just be happy with the fact that you got what you want, and don't try to fucking take away other people's joy. Right? Because it genuinely means a lot to me, and I will be really pissed if other people take away Cata Classic from me just because herder, that's what ruined WoW, and I don't want to see it again. So yeah, mini tangent on that. But yeah, like that's also kind of why it's so like almost bittersweet looking through all of these old like papers and things, because I have all of these old memories, so to speak, of class, and some of them are nice. I liked fourth grade. I had really good teachers. I remember Mrs. Aquinas was my teacher at the time. Super nice lady, super helpful. I mean, she was like the first teacher to actually really help me want to enjoy learning. And then like going on, fifth grade was kind of whatever's more the same, but then sixth grade was like honestly a real turning point. And sixth grade was probably the hardest I've ever been challenged in school, like almost ever. Which sounds weird, but for sixth grade, the curriculum that those teachers gave me, Mr. Dillon and Mr. Joseph, I remember them well, it was insane. And honestly, I think it was a little bit too much, because it was just honestly a ridiculous curriculum for a sixth grade class. We had to do some crazy ass bullshit. Things like I said, it was harder than like my seventh and eighth grade years. I think some of the assignments I got in sixth grade were infinitely more difficult and required more effort outside of school than anything I got, even through like ninth grade. Ninth grade, I got like a lot of homework assignments, but seventh and eighth grade were genuinely a joke compared to sixth grade with those teachers. Which I mean, I don't even hate it, because like I did save the introduction letter to Mr. Joseph wrote an introduction letter to our course, and it included like some words from his previous students basically saying the same thing about like this was the first time I ever felt truly challenged in school. And I remember that one is a little bit weird, because I actually remember distinctly really not liking sixth grade, at least a large part of it, because it was so much work. But I actually think if there's one little difference to how I remember versus how I feel, that one is actually kind of like, I actually look back on that a little bit fondly, because while I may not have enjoyed it at the time, my teachers were really fucking good. I had two really good teachers. In fact, my sixth grade teacher, Mr. Dillon, he was my history and literature teacher. Um, he left such an impression on me that he basically, I remember he told me at the end of the school year that, you know, his main goal as a teacher is he wants one of his students to end up becoming a historian, because, you know, he loved history and he was like super passionate about it. And he said, like, I want one of my students to become a historian. And he told me point blank that, Mark, you are going to be my historian. I believe it. Like, if I could name one of my students that I think cares as much about history as I do, it would be you. And I took those words to heart. Let me tell you, my initial major in college was history teaching. I mean, I love history. Like, I absolutely love just learning about like history and just world events and stuff like that. It's something I guess I don't really talk about a lot, but it's like, if we're talking about like what subject in school I absolutely loved the most, by far, history. It's just so fascinating to me. And because, I mean, as a kid, I remember always thinking, the way I described why I loved it so much is I loved learning about like WoW lore. I loved reading Wowpedia. And I've kind of joked because like lately I've done nothing but bash WoW lore, but that's not necessarily because I hate the lore itself or I hate learning about that stuff. I love storytelling. Like, a good story to me is like probably the most satisfying thing in the world. I love it. It's one of the reasons I can't stop singing Final Fantasy XIV's praises. It's a brilliantly told story. And I absolutely love good storytelling, good world building more than anything else in a video game, pretty much. And it's one of the most disappointing things to me about modern WoW, the fact that I used to love the lore and the current writers have just torn it to shreds. I want to love WoW's story, and even to this day, I just still can't. I fucking can't. Like, Dragonflight, I'm sorry, just it's not a good story. It's not bad. It's not nearly as bad as Shadowlands, to the point where like I can't complain, but it is so boring and so bog standard that I just don't understand how people can enjoy it. Like, I've seen people say it's a good story, and like, I'm sorry, what? It's like, is the bar that low now? That Dragonflight is considered good writing and good storytelling? Like, at least we're not actively massacring established characters anymore. That's a start. But like, Jesus Christ, it's so fucking bland. I really genuinely don't think Steve Denuser can tell a good story to save his life. But I'm not going to get into that fucking rabbit hole again. Point being, I absolutely loved history, and that teacher left a major impression on me. And I still cared a lot about history all the way through the point where I graduated high school. And it, even when I was doing poorly later on in high school, I still got like, not just like A's, like hundreds in history. Like, when I stopped caring about high school, I stopped doing my math homework, I stopped doing my science homework, and I sometimes didn't do writing assignments if I didn't feel like it. And history, I fucking studied for every test because I just fucking liked it. And that is how fucking psychopathic my enjoyment for history is. I fucking love history. But yeah, I still like, I almost feel bad thinking about that because, like, I mean, I'm not a historian. I'm making fucking YouTube videos. I'm not, actually doing, history research and teaching or whatever. But I don't know. I guess it's never too late. Maybe later on in my life, I can return to history and become like, a history professor or something. Go back to college for that. I have no fucking idea. Probably not. I doubt I ever actually will, but it's, it's something I tell myself to make me feel like I'm not completely failing Mr. Dillon. Because, I really wanted to like actually do that. It's whatever. But yeah, sixth grade was like, whatchamacallit, a turning point, I guess. And then, where's the fucking totem quest item? There we go. But then the real meat of the story, the real fucking meat, is, and I haven't sorted through all of my 7th and 8th grade stuff yet. 7th and 8th grade, I would say, in terms of enjoying actual schoolwork and looking back on it fondly, is by far my favorite years of school. Because I just had fun. Like, I was at that point so fucking good at school that, okay, so to give you an idea, I I like I said I liked history, right? And I said I took extensive notes. And this is a callback to like before when I said I would take like flashcards and shit, and I would make like little quizzes for myself, and I would make like same thing all the way through seventh and eighth grade. Like I took extensive notes. I had like pages upon pages full of notes, and then especially what ended up happening is I think it was like was it? I don't remember if it was late seventh grade or by the time eighth grade started, I was taking notes on my computer. I think it was towards the end of seventh grade, they started giving us laptops. And we would be able to use them in class to take notes on Google Docs. And here's the thing when you play World of Warcraft for like most of your free time as a kid, it turns out that your APM in terms of typing is really fucking high. So most of the kids typed super slowly and stuff, but like I can type extremely fast. And I've been able to type extremely fast ever since I was a kid. So in we got these laptops to take notes, and it was like literally a godsend for me because the main thing that I always hated about note taking is having to write shit down, and I was never able to write fast enough to match like the pace of the teacher. You know, one of the things that our teachers always would like instill in us is like, you know, good note takers don't write down everything. Good note takers only write down the important details. So when I show this slide, don't try to copy the slide. Make sure that you only write the important stuff that you think you need to know for the test or whatever. I wrote down every slide, word for word, like bullet point for bullet point. I copied every slide the moment we got laptops because I would just type that fast. Like I'd fucking type out the entire slide, boom, have it in a Google Doc. And eventually it got to the point where some of my friends would start just saying, can you just take notes for me? Because like you're literally copying the PowerPoint. Why am I taking notes if you have literally copied the teacher's PowerPoint because you're typing it so fast? So I would give my friends the Google Doc link, and they started giving it to their friends. So I made a Google Doc for my notes, and I started recording all of my notes on a Google Doc for other people to use because, you know, I took the best notes in that entire grade. And then there was like a few different classes. So some people from my class had friends in the other classes, and they were like, hey, can I send the link to your Google Doc to the other classes? And I think you see where this is going. Eventually, every single person in my grade was using my notes. I called it Mark's Note Center. I was really proud of it. I had a whole, you might recognize this. I had a whole little header thing. I had like, you know, an announcement message at the top that was timestamped when it was last updated. And I'd have like little sections on this is the history section and this is the math section. And I had it all neatly organized. And then even better, because I would make my own quizzes and flashcards, I put links to my quizzes and flashcards on my Google Doc so that other kids in my class could take my quiz. So I distinctly remember one of the proudest moments of like my childhood was it was the night before a big history test. It was like a history midterm, and my note Google Doc had like 35 active users, kids in my class, all on there at like 6 p.m. studying. And there was like I don't know if they have it anymore or if it's like one of those things where you have to manually enable, but there was a live chat for the Google Doc. Like you could open it up and people could type in it. And I had a live chat on my Google Doc with all the kids in my class, like asking me questions. And like, oh, I'm having trouble with this. Could you help me, like, help explain this? And I would be answering questions on the Google Doc, and then like I posted the quiz, and you could see on Quizlet like the people who were taking the quiz, so I could see all the results of the kids in my class taking my quiz. And it just, as a little kid, that made me feel so happy and so like proud of myself. Like, oh my God, other people in my class are like, you know, using my work and like benefiting from it. And like, I think you can maybe see why I'm telling this story, like the little parallels and how it made the fact that I've never told this story before. I thought of it the other day and I'm like, how have I never said that before? Because in a sense, I remember telling this to my mom when I remembered it, like my note center was effectively like the original leveling guide Google Doc. Because if I had never managed that Google Doc and kept it like constantly updated with, every single day there was like a new lesson, I would upload that lesson, add it to the notes. The thing ended up being like gargantuan to the point where I had to start making separate Google Docs because it was lagging because I had so much shit on there. And learning how to manage that and how to work with Google Docs and like run a doc that had like multiple active users and stuff like that. Like I didn't even really process it for a while, but that actually gave me a lot of valuable experience that has kind of helped me out with all this stuff, which is kind of amusing to consider. I never really would have thought that like if I could pick one thing, the one thing I learned from like 7th or 8th grade that would be the most useful for me now, I never thought managing that notes Google Doc would end up being the most important thing. But like, it is kind of funny how that works out. Where do I guess I just continue along the campaign at this point. There's definitely ways to optimize this. This has already felt fairly fast, just literally sending it down the campaign. But I'm sure that there is like certain break-off points. I think that's what you would do because there's a lot of really good side quest hubs in Azure Span that I didn't end up doing here. Oh, Community Feast is almost active. I might actually end this by doing Community Feast. That would be fun. Especially because I still need to do it for... shit. Let me pick up this quest. Yeah, I still need to do the Community Feast. Let me just do Crowcheck the Shore Prowler. Because that's probably just going to get me to ding, and then I don't need to worry about this other crap. Crowcheck the Shore Prowler over here. Yeah, but the Notes Center is like something that... I don't even know how I didn't remember it for so long. It was like tucked away like in the recesses of my memory. Because after... The problem with the Notes Center is back in 8th grade, in 7th and 8th grade, like we all had the same teachers. So everyone in my grade had... I forget what their names were. I remember Mr. Bell. Mr. Bell was my history teacher. I only remember the history teachers. Oh, and my writing teacher was Mr. Ferraro. Mr. Ferraro was awesome. But maybe I shouldn't be saying teacher names. I guess like I could technically be doxing myself because like if somebody looked up all the teacher names, whatever. But yeah, it was really fun. In 8th grade, but like it didn't end up like working out long term because by the time you get to like 9th grade and high school and stuff like that, everybody has different classes. So I remember initially I tried to keep my Notes Center going, but there weren't enough people actively using it. And also one of the main problems that I ran into is I had so much homework that I had to do just on my own in high school that I just ran out of time to actually maintain my Google Doc. So if I remember correctly, I think I tried to keep it going at the start of 9th grade, but then I think there was like a period of like a month where I just didn't update my Google Doc, and then people stopped using it, and I was just like, fuck it. Because there weren't as many users anyway, because like so many people had different classes that just had different curriculums, or at least were different enough that like it didn't really apply. So I just didn't worry about it too much. But it was fun while it lasted, I guess. And what else? I think this should be enough. This is a really fast time, by the way. Obviously, it's not like a perfect one-to-one representation because like I did have rested experience, but I only had a little bit of rested experience. Definitely doesn't make up for like how absurdly fast this has been. That's actually not a full level. I can do the Rowie quest. That's probably the fastest one. This one's going to be really easy. But yeah, this is like barely over 3 hours. For reference, like boosts take, from what people have told me, if you buy a boost, it's like, what, 250k and you hit max level in like a little under 2 hours. So you're saving, basically, it's like, do you value your time as, oh, I'm going to spend another 1 or so hours doing, leveling? Or am I going to spend 250,000 gold? Like, I don't know. I guess the answer will be different for everybody. But personally, I feel that like another extra hour of my time, because obviously with boosting, right, you still need to actively be there. That's, I think, a big misconception with boosting. You don't just like go AFK and then like your character's max level. You still need to be following the people around. You need to be semi-active. So like if you're used to leveling, it requires the same like mental awareness as boosting. You just need to be going through the motions and doing the quests. Otherwise you're just like following people along. Oh my, are you fucking kidding me? Um I'm gonna just like kill a bunch of Gorlocks over here and oh some what the fuck? Uh Speaking of boosting, is this a new spot? Huh. Okay, if somebody knows this, like, is this a hyperspawn for leveling? Or is this a hyperspawn for, like, leather farming or something? Because definitely some fucking hyperspawn shenanigans going on. I don't know what that's all about, but, you know. Let me know in the comments if you happen to know what this is. If you're like, oh, this you're farming leather or something like that. Let's see what I get. There's no loot. Is it just raw gold? It has to be either leveling or raw gold if I got no loot from these guys. Right? I don't know, I'm confused. Either way, yeah. What was I saying? Yeah, ninth grade, stuff like that. Yeah, the last thing, I guess. Oh, there we go, level 70, I can stop. Yeah, 3 hours, 20 minutes. That's a really fucking good time. I'm very happy with that. 3 hours, 20 minutes. This can add, and like I said, this is like the rough speed run. I wasn't using my banners. I was honestly kind of rambling and whatnot. Lost a lot of focus. Guardian Druid, admittedly, it's fast, but I have nowhere near the same muscle memory and stuff with modern Guardian Druid. I probably played the rotation significantly wrong. Yeah. Is the soup starting? Tuskar will begin their feast. Oh, in 30 seconds. Yeah, okay, I'll do the soup. Might as well. Nice thing about the soup is I still need to get the flavor packet, or whatever the fuck it's called, for my monk. I have been doing this thing on like 5 different characters for 4 weeks now, and I have not gotten the flavor pocket. And I'm not about to drop 70k gold on something that's only like a moderate convenience. So I've just been waiting to get it, and I kind of figured I'd get it by now, and like I haven't. So hopefully I get it today, because, you know, at this point, I've leveled so many characters over the last week to do that testing shit for the dungeons. I have so many chances now. I think I have 7 characters now at 70. So I better fucking get this thing. And the nice thing is, because I got my druid up fast enough, I have one more chance before I end it. But what was I going to end with? Yeah, so final thing that I think was moderately interesting. I don't know if I've told this particular story before. It's amusing, so I may have. But on the topic of taking notes, when my history teacher, Mr. Bell, found out that I was basically sharing notes with the rest of the class, I remember, like, it was kind of funny because, like, he wasn't really sure what to say. Because on one hand, he was like, so you're sharing your notes with everybody else. And he was like, you know, because you can't really exactly tell a student, right? Like, you know, you shouldn't do that because, like, there's no rule against it. You know, at no point was it said you can't share amongst each other. Like, you obviously want to encourage people to work together and study. And it's not like I was giving them the answers. Like, when I explained to him what I was doing, I mean, I think it's very clear that, like, for a 7th grade, 8th grade kid, that's, like, kind of fucking impressive. Having like your own setup or like whatever the fuck. Where do I buy this? Salted fish, whatever. It is off Jintatuk, whatever. I'm blind. What? It was right there. Yeah. I like as a kid, I think that's pretty impressive, right? You know, having your own little Google Doc. So it wasn't like he could tell me I couldn't do it because like you don't want to discourage that, right? But I remember he was kind of like, help Big Canuck supervise the others. Oh, this fucking thing. So I just mashed this button. And yeah, and I think he kind of told me like the problem with me sharing my notes with other people is that like a lot of kids in the class, like I said, stopped taking notes because they knew that they could just look on my thing. And I think I kind of pointed out like that's fine, right? Like not everybody needs to be like an expert at taking notes, but obviously like they disagree. They're trying to instill in you, you know, oh, you need to take notes. But the way I see it, it's like, hey, as long as they learn the material, like that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help them with that. Where do I go for this? Oh, this is the one where it's like No? Oh yeah, this one. Right, right, right. And then it's on the table here. No, it's a different one. Uh, Dragonhead eel. Man, my memory is fucking shit. Where is this? I could have sworn it was this one. Wait, what? Oh, I'm blind. Okay. I've exhausted my vigor. Fuck. But yeah, so point being, I'll cut to the chase here. Mr. Bell didn't want to tell me to stop sharing my notes, but he also wanted kids to start taking notes of their own. So he, one class, like it was after he found out that I was taking notes, and he was like looking at what I was doing, and he saw that I was literally copying his stuff word for word. Oh, the Orca Milk. Fuck, I need to do the quest. Fun fact, if you ever get into a point where you can't do this little quest because the NPC isn't spawned in, they should probably fix that, but I guess they don't really give a shit. It's not that huge of a deal. Just fly out of Ascara, fly back in, and it'll give you a new task. I've had that happen a few times. But yeah, so Mr. Bell, as a way to challenge me, he started flying through the slides, like speed reading them, talking really fucking quick, and trying to like get to the next slide as quickly as possible before I could write it down. And he would go through like the first few slides, and I had everything word for word, even with him reading it super fast. And he was like, what the fuck? So he started like just not even finishing his sentences. Like I remember it was the goofiest shit I've ever seen, where he would basically just like say like da 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 da, next slide, and wouldn't even fucking finish half of the bullet points. And then a lot of the kids were like pissed because they were actually trying to take their own notes just because they wanted to do it correctly, and it was just unfair because he's interrupting class to effectively have like a little competition with me to see if he could talk faster than I could write notes down. And eventually I'm like, look, you can't beat me. You have to talk at a normal pace so other kids can do it, and there is no pace fast enough where I can't actually write it down. Because like literally if he just reads the words at a somewhat fast pace, still can get it perfectly. He would literally have to skip entire sentences for me to not get it. And it became like this little game where he would always like try to see if he could like go through a slide fast enough sometimes. A lot of times he would wait to see if I was like not looking. Like if I was mildly distracted, because you know ADD happens sometimes. I get mildly distracted, I look out the window, and he like looks over, sees I'm distracted, reads the slide really quick, and I'm like, oh fuck, and then he skips to the next one. So it was like a little fun mini game that Mr. Bell played to try and like mess with me when he found out I was doing that. But he was a really good teacher. I remember actually I went on a trip to like actual vacation, not like a class trip, with my mom to all like the Civil War battlefields and stuff like that. And I bought a bullet from Gettysburg. It was like a real Civil War bullet or whatever, and I brought that as like a gift to him because he was like my favorite history teacher. I had a lot of really good history teachers. Maybe I'm just biased because like I really liked history, but yeah, obviously, I mean, Mr. Dillon, as I said before, definitely my favorite one because like he left a massive impression on me. But like all my history teachers were honestly really good. Anyways, I'm already level 70. I've been recording for honestly not even 4 hours. Pretty good. But I still need to, of course, edit over those two sections where the audio was fucked. And I'm really dreading that, like, maybe the audio has actually been fucked the entire time. Because, like, I have a little audio mixer thing on OBS. Like, I can see the audio. I think it's been fine. But, like, I'm really worried that it actually hasn't been. But yeah, there's still shit that I want to ramble about. But I'll do that later. You know, we have... Wait, did I open my thing? I don't think I actually checked to see if I got the flavor pocket. I didn't. That's probably a good way to end it. No fucking way! It's because I did it on the fucking video! Oh my god. Oh, my dog hurt me. My dog is barking. Oh my god. Well, I am glad I decided to record it, because you know, if I didn't record this, I would never have gotten it. Fuck, well now I gotta get the shit recrafted onto my monk. Okay. Well that's a good way to end the video. Thank you for watching. Pretty good run. I hope you enjoyed, and make sure to stay tuned for the full 10 to 70 run later this week. It should be a lot of fun. I got a lot of cool stuff planned for it. But yeah, thanks for watching. Peace.